As she said this, she quietly avoided other people's eyes and ears and talked about a green jade the size of nail, which hit Shueji's acupoint. Because she was just standing in front of the collapse, she blocked the eyes of others, but no one found out for a moment. In the eyes of the public, it is the South Crane said half of the words. Shueji suddenly woke up. As soon as Shueji wakes up, she immediately supports the bed and makes a gesture to vomit. The maid on one side quickly bypasses Nanha and takes a wooden basin. The smell of filth is hard to hide in the room. Nanha turned his head and looked at the flowers on the street. Princess, you see Sister Shui. She has suffered so much. If not, she will be treated first. Mo Shanghua thought that he would do everything he could, but then he thought that although Nanhe's poor, if he really succeeded, it would be very effective. In this way, she'd better stay out of it. Thinking, Mo Shanghua simply raised her hand and stroked her forehead. Her voice lowered. My head hurts. While talking, another empty hand is put on Qinya. Qinya helps her with both hands. Taking advantage of this opportunity, she grabs Qinya's wrist slightly. Qinya was worried about the anxiety in her heart. Now, she suddenly reacted and cried out, Is it a headache again? Princess, you insist. I'll take you back. Then he turned to Nanha and said, Madam Nanha, the princess is not well. She is too busy for herself. You'd better go out of the house to get medical treatment for Madam Shui. I'll leave first. The South Crane Mao bottom once crossed a wipe of dark color, but had a knot on the face. Princess's body is important. Still Quixum take her to go back. Don't delay to cure. Qinya reluctantly nodded her head, and then she helped Mo Shanghua out. Out of Shueji's yard, the flower on the street straightened up again and turned to look at the brightly lit yard behind her. Her eyes were a little dark. Looking at the current situation, Shueji is also in collusion with Nanji plus Pingji, so the three of them are really enough to sing a big play. I don't know that the princess has such kung fu that she almost cheated me. Before I could think of it, Qinya's chirping voice came back from behind. Mo Shanghua collected her thoughts, turned around and said, I'm just tired. I don't want to waste words with her. Just then, she turned into the secluded garden. Qinya was about to open her mouth, but she suddenly pulled Qinya and hissed her. Not far in front of me, a man dressed as a maid was peering around in a path with sparse vegetation. He saw that no one was able to move on. She also collapsed a woven basket in her hand, which was covered with a handkerchief with broken flowers. She couldn't see what was inside. Take a close look. The maidservant's cheek is actually Pingji's appearance. Give me the medicine bag. Mo Shanghua Mao Guang a coagulate. Low voice dynasty after death of Qinya command. Qinya takes out the medicine bag and hands it to Mo Shanghua. He is very clever and doesn't ask much for fear of scaring the snake. Mo Shanghua took the medicine bag, took a few small porcelain vases from it, and handed the medicine bag to Qinya again. You don't have to be in the hospital first. I don't have to be here. With that, she ran after Pingji and followed her quietly. Pingji is just an ordinary person and doesn't have any martial arts skills. Therefore, it doesn't take any trouble to follow the flowers on the street, and Pingji has never found out. Following Pingji's 7 turns in 8 turns, she arrived at Beiyuan without any accident. Pingji looked around in front of Beiyuan for a while, then carefully pushed the door of Beiyuan and entered. Mo Shanghua busy also followed to go in, see no one in the courtyard, then entered the inner room again. The house is still empty, not to mention Pingji. Even Yunji and the maid are missing. The flower eye color on the street instantly coagulates and scans around the house in a leisurely manner and says in a loud voice, I've arrived, and you can come out. The dark room was still dead. A burst of white smoke slowly poured into the gap under the closed wooden door and spread towards the house. Mo Shanghua stood in the same place without changing his face. After a long time, he suddenly changed his face and covered his head tightly with one hand. Toxic. With that, she quickly raised her hand to seal her acupoints, so as to avoid the spread of the poison. Then she would stagger to open the door. Before she got close to the door, the old carved wooden door opened from the outside, and a person wrapped in a black cloak came in. She was petite, and she should be a woman. The woman's body was covered with a layer of awe. As soon as she entered the room, she directly took out a soft sword from her waist and stabbed it at the flowers on the street. In the deep night, his body is as fast as a ghost, and his eyes are bright and bright. At this time, he is full of killing intention and a bit of cold-blooded and merciless color. Mo, Shanghua Mao Guang, and that I looked at each other for a moment, and his heart was awe-inspiring, no longer the previous poison posture. He immediately drew out his dagger to fight against it. No matter how fast the move was, he was not inferior to that woman. For a moment, the sound of blade collision in the room was heard all the time. With a bang, a table was shattered by the hands of the flowers on the street, and the smoke and dust in the house were everywhere. The flowers on the street took this opportunity to sweep up the woman's cloak like electricity. As soon as the cloak was lifted, the flower eyes on the street flashed a little surprised. "It's you. I thought it was you who sent it, but now I don't think so." In front of him, the cloaker took off his cover, and his cheek was bright and beautiful. It was Nanji and Nanha. At this time, the South Crane is no longer as gentle and elegant as before, with charming lips and delicate jaw raised slightly. "Yes, it's really me, but so what? I'm not as good as others now, and you can't do anything to me." Mo Shanghua steps forward slowly, and the dagger plays back and forth between her slender fingers like a doll. Han Meng is particularly attractive. "If I kill you, what about pushing it to Yunji, who is already crazy?" After a pause, she had a deep voice. "If I had guessed right, it would have been your plan." In fact, Mo Shanghua is not sure. After all, Nanny's not as good at martial arts as she is. If so, why not find more people? However, she did not know, and Nanha never thought that her martial arts had reached such a level. At that time, the South Crane listened to her words, but did not angrily smile, eyes full of irony. "You think you really can kill me? Or dare you kill me?" The last sentence is even more arrogant. Eyebrows and eyes are therefore more and more open up. "You're just a concubine. How dare I?" Mo Shanghua quietly looks at the South Crane, who shows his true colors, and his eyes are so calm. South Crane lips corner irony of loneliness more and more big. She walks slowly to Mo Shanghua in front. "Just way. Ordinary? Don't forget, I'm the one with the sharp heart of the Lord. You want me to do anything anyway. You are not qualified to kill me. Besides, if I really die at your hands, I'm sure you'll never live 3 days." If she died, Yin Beiqing still wanted to defend this bitch. Her subordinates would not agree, and they would have to avenge her. Mo Shanghua eyebrow tipped this just slightly pick to pick. The Mao inside quickly delimits a few minutes dark color. "Do you really think Yin North City will care about your life and death? How he dotes on you. You're just a concubine, and I'm the princess, and I'm from the Imperial City. I'm worth more than you." The South Crane is not angry at all. The corner of the mouth is uncanny of startup. Is so, wait for the future to see to know. As soon as the voice fell, the wooden door creaked again. It was pushed open from the outside. It was Yunji, who had disappeared from the beginning. She ran in madly. When she saw them, she yelled, "Ghost!" and sat down on the ground, crying with tears on her face. She kept calling the maid who was waiting for her, but no one came. A fierce color flashed in the South Crane's eyes. Without hesitation, he grabbed Yunji. With a flash of cold light in his hand, a piece of software went directly through Yunji's chest and then threw it on the flower. Mo Shanghua could have dodged, but at the critical moment, she dodged in her eyes, pretended to dodge, caught Yunji directly, looked down at her wound, and stabbed a silver needle into one of her acupoints quietly. When she looked up, she saw that Nanha had quickly taken off her cloak, turned it over, and tied it back on her body. The black cloak changed and became her usual dress style. At the same time, the courtyard also sounded disorderly footsteps closer and closer. Before anyone came in, Nanha opened the door in horror. "Help! Help! Help! Who's there?" "It seems to be Mrs. Nan." "It's really Mrs. Nan. Go and have a look." After the noise of discussion, the group of people came closer to this side. Lanterns and candlesticks were also lit in the dark courtyard. As soon as Pingji saw that the South Crane came out, she quickly crossed a successful color in her eyes and hurriedly came forward to meet the South Crane. Yuana also rushed in at this time and came to the South Crane's side. "Madam, I have found you. How did you come here by yourself?" Nanha didn't look at Yuana. Instead, he took Pingji by the hand. His beautiful eyes were full of panic and fear. His words were incoherent. "Sister Ping, Princess is crazy. She killed Sister Yunji." "What?" A word aroused 1,000 waves, and everyone was shocked. When they rushed into the house, they saw Yunji lying on the ground, her eyes closed. They didn't know whether the blood was exhausted or how. The blood had stopped, but the blood was still dripping on her chest, which was very shocking. Most of the attendants were little maids, and they were pale with fright, but they didn't dare to move because there was no Nanha Pingji. Pingji looked at Yunji lying on the ground. She stepped back a few steps. She looked at the flowers on the street in surprise and anger. She said sadly, "Even though Yunji's sister had done something wrong to the princess before, she's crazy now, and her life here is worse than death. Why does the princess want to kill her?" Imo Shanghua's Mao Guang quietly glanced at the South Crane beside him. His eyes were always calm and cold. "Which eye of yours saw that I killed Yunji?" Pingji pointed to the soft sword stained with blood on the ground. "The material evidence is here, and Sister Nan's certification is here. How can you deny it?" Then she slowed down her voice and comforted Nanha beside her. "Sister Nan, don't be afraid. Since she dares to do such a vicious thing, the Lord will not shield her when she comes back. Come and tell us what you see." Then he took a few deep breaths and tried to calm down his emotions. After a while, he said, "I just want to see Sister Shui. When I came out from Sister Shui, I let Yuan stay outside, and I came in alone. Did not expect to just come in. See Princess Crazy General Cloud G, a sword stabbed to death at this point. Her face showed a bit of palpitation, as if she had really experienced the general. Princess, she will kill me, if not for your sister. You come in time. I'm afraid I will die at this time." Pingji's eyes quickly passed the color of excitement, and then realized that it was time to celebrate. She hurriedly suppressed the excitement in her heart and looked coldly at the flowers on the street. The prince's crime is like the common people's crime. Someone came to arrest this vicious woman and shut her up in the Chaifeng, waiting for the Lord to come back to deal with it. Who dares to move? A few boys just moved their steps. The flowers in the street swept away. Their voice was as cold as ice. With a little dignity, they froze in the same place and did not dare to move. Imo Shanghua's eyes fell on the faces of Nan, He, and Pingji. Their eyes were dark and deep, but they were full of extraordinary power, which inspired people's hearts. Her ruddy lips picked lightly, but her words were very cold. "Just by your words, you want to convict me? Don't say these words can't prove anything at all. It's just that what happened today is really what I did." As concubines who don't even have any rank and file, you're not qualified to move me even if you say the prince has committed the same crime as the common people. After a pause, she said, "The following offense is a capital crime." This word's not only a round of small c maidservant, all don't dare to move. Even flat G is also angry complexion iron green, bite a tooth to find a refute of words. Nanha, however, was afraid. He said calmly, "We have never planned to deal with the princess privately, but now the evidence is solid. We have to ask for an explanation for Yunji's elder sister, and we have to wait for the Lord to come back to make a decision." Imo Shanghua stares at Nan He for a while. She makes a slight mockery in her eyes. She picks the corner of her lips and says, "Good evidence. Since you are so sure, I will show you the real evidence as you wish." Said, "Don't wait for South Crane reaction come over." Her body then, like streamer general, quickly swept to South Crane in front. Nana's eyes suddenly changed, but now there are so many people with mixed eyes that they can't use their body method. So they quickly stepped back, pretended to be pale, and cried, "The princess is stimulated. She's delirious. She's hurting people. Don't you stop her soon." The bodyguard was shocked by the words of Mo Shanghua just now. In addition, Mo Shanghua's speed was too fast, so he couldn't react at all. When he came back to his senses, Mo Shanghua had already grasped the cloak of slow heat. Nanha's pupil shrinks slightly, and he seems to be in a hurry to grasp his cloak. In fact, he uses some internal power in it, and the two people are in a stalemate. Seeing this, Pingji pointed to those maidservants and said angrily, "A bunch of useless things. Can't you see the princess crazy? If anything happens to the princess and Mrs. Nan, your 10 heads are not enough." The maidservants were awakened by the shock. Generally, the maidservants didn't move. The maidservants came forward to help and wanted to separate them. Nanha secretly scolds Pingji for being stupid. These maidservants just grab their clothes and want to separate them in this way. She is different from Mo Shanghua. She is determined not to expose her martial arts. Therefore, she has to take in her internal power and retreat along the strength of her maid. Mo Shanghua naturally knows that Nanha will never tear off the mask on his face, so he seizes the opportunity and pulls his maidservants away. Then he pulls down Nanha's cloak. The color of the South Crane's eyes changed slightly, and the plain hands under the wide sleeve robe clenched slightly. The eyes could not help staring at the cape in the hand of the flower on the street. Mo Shanghua steps back and turns over the cloak he just captured, revealing the dark side that Nanny used to wear when he assassinated Mo Shanghua. Her lips are slightly red. "Nanji, you keep saying that I killed Yinji. You just happen to find it. Can you explain why there is blood on your cloak?" Nanha squeezed his hand tightly, trying to maintain his face, not showing half a flaw. This blood stain is Sister Yun's. As for why, the princess should not be very clear in her heart. Since it's not a shameful disease, why do you want to wear the cloak back and hide the blood from others? Why is it that the blood on your body is less than half of that of a person who intrudes carelessly? Mo Shanghua's calm eyes were looking at the South Crane, and his voice was deep. South Crane, a choke, changed to have time to refute. One side of the Pingji eyebrows and eyes obviously show a little uneasy, busy way. "You don't bewitch people. Maybe this is the evidence that you want to blame. Who knows you?" "Shut up, a word is not finished." Mo Shanghua, then cold mouth sweeps to Pingji. She suddenly feels like the edge of the blade across the neck in general. Originally wanted to say words as a word all spit out. After a pause, the Southern Crane seemed to be stunned for a while. The flower on the street said, "I'll help you explain. Naturally, you're the real murderer. The blood on the cloak is the evidence, and the software on the ground is your weapon." Nanha pinched the palm of his hand, and his eyes suddenly burst into tears. "I know that the princess has not liked me. If the princess is still angry that I am late in returning the right to take charge of the government for a few days, I am willing to do anything to make the princess calm down, but I dare not do such things. I hope the princess will let me go," said, then knelt down in front of the flowers on the street, eyes slightly red, a pair of grievance to cry. At first, people were suspicious of Nanha because of her words. Now, seeing that Nanha is so aggrieved and thinking of her gentle and elegant appearance in the mansion, they can't help but turn her aside. The color of irony in the flower eyes on the street is getting stronger and stronger, and the cloak is placed on the ground flat so that people can see clearly. Your words are turning fast. As soon as you see the evidence is placed in front of you, you can't stop crying. Just now, it's still powerful and majestic. South Crane secretly gnawed a silver tooth, has not spoken. Mo Shanghua sneered and said, "Well, since you don't admit it, I'll tell you something. Your sword is a bit biased. Yunji is not dead. Besides her, I can cure her madness. At that time, everyone will know what the truth is." With the words of flowers falling on the street, the color of South Crane's eyes flashed with the speed visible to the naked eye, a bit shocked, and the simple hands that had just loosened were tightly squeezed together. Pingji also couldn't believe it. She widened her eyes and exclaimed, What are you talking about? How is this possible? Even if it's Dr. Liu, one of these two things may not be possible. I never exaggerate. The color of flowers on the street remains unchanged, and the black and white eyes are full of confidence. The south crane in the heart inexplicably trembled for a while. The busy death pressure in the heart of shock, uneasy way. Can you appear here in the middle of the night? How to explain? Before the flower on the street opened its mouth, there was a rush of footsteps outside the door. Then Xinya came to the flower on the street with a medicine bag on her back. Princess, the maid brought the medicine made by Lu Yui. After a pause, she looked around with a puzzled face. What's the matter? How so many people are here? Emo Shanghua didn't explain. She just took the medicine bag and said, I just went out of Xueji's place. Suddenly, I remembered that he had asked me to bring medicine to Yunji because he was not in the house these 2 days after he came to treat Xueji with Imperial Dr. Lu last time. That's why he came here to deliver the medicine. Xinya looked like she didn't understand, but she added, the doctor is kind-hearted. Although the princess had some previous festivals with Yunji, she is also a doctor. Naturally, she has no reason to refuse Liu. In this way, the reason seems to become reasonable again. For a time, people looked different. Emo Shanghua saw that everyone was silent, so she struck while the iron was hot and said, since everyone has their own opinions and no one is willing to admit it, it's better to let Nanji and I ban our feet separately. After Yunji is cured, we'll come to settle the case. If she really points to me, you don't have to say, I'll plead guilty to the lore myself. Speaking of the back, she turned her eyes to see Nanha's tail slightly elongated, with deep meaning in her words. But if Yunji points to you, Nanji stood up. Her face had recovered as usual, but it was different from usual, and she was gentle and strong. If Yunji refers to me, I would like to apologize to the prince and princess. No, the color of the flower eyes on the street is suddenly cold, as sharp as an ice blade. Your crime of slander must not be less. The South G Mao bottom once crossed a bit hate color, as well as a bit slightly satirize. Good, if really so, maidservant concubine is willing. With Yunji's current state, it's not easy to save her life. How can there be other results? She doesn't believe that Emo Shanghua can really cure Yunji. More importantly, she will never give me a chance to spend. At this time, Hua Mao color on the street has returned to the usual calm, eyes away from the South Crane, swept one by one in the face of the people. Before the matter is thoroughly investigated, I and Nanji are suspected from now on. I and Nanha will be banned in their respective hospitals. In order to facilitate my treatment, Yunji also moved to my hospital. Pingji heart suddenly feel wrong. Busy way. No. Who knows you can cure? If I can't cure it, I'll leave everything to the Lord. Emo Shanghua didn't even think about it. She answered without hesitation. Pingji also want to say more. Nanji will stop her, according to the princess said. She is the Lord's right hand. Even if she does get there, she also believes that the Lord will never abandon her because of that useless woman. Even if the Lord really intends to abandon her, and she will never let this woman stay. After all, there was a grudging saying about the matter, and people left one after another without any reason to stay. Emo Shanghua sees the crowd retreat and goes to Yunji, who has been lying on the ground for a long time, and no one cares about her, and probes her nose. Lying for such a long time, Yunji, who had only one breath left, was so weak that her breath was almost inaudible. Fortunately, the blood from the wound was no longer flowing. Give me the bag. Take 2 candlesticks and put them on both sides. The flower's head on the street is not raised, and orders in a low voice. Shinyaji didn't speak much at this time. He nodded his head and took things over. Emo Shanghua took out the scissors in the medicine bag and cut the clothes that Yunji's blood had coagulated for a few minutes. He said, go to prepare a basin of warm water as soon as possible. When you go back, take more gauze, take a set of clothes, and bring some boys back to stay outside. Xinya didn't dare to delay. She turned around and trotted away. Soon she was panting and came in with the gauze. Emo Shanghua is paying attention to the treatment, cleaning the wound, sewing hemostasis again. Every step is done carefully. His hands are not half of the contempt. It took 2 hours to stabilize Yunji's injury. Emo Shanghua wiped the sweat on his forehead, and looked down at Yunji in a coma. Chinya, change his clothes for him. Chinya held her breath for a long time and saw that she had a place of her own. Although she was serving Yunji, she didn't want to say anything. She came forward to help change clothes. When the clothes were changed, Imo Shanghua called in the little guy who was guarding outside and told them to put Yunji on a door, so he carried her back to the dockyard. At that time, the night was already very deep, and the flowers on the street were very tired. They ordered a few people to look at Yunji, and then they fell asleep. Everything in the palace is watched by Yin Beiqing's dark guards. Everything can escape these carefully trained dark guards. A dark way is about to report all the things that happened tonight to Yin Beiqing. Before he can send the secret letter, he suddenly reaches out a hand and grabs the secret letter from him. The dark guard was surprised. When he saw who was coming, his eyebrows suddenly wrinkled. Sister Nanha, this letter is sent every day according to the Lord's command. It's too late today. You can't delay it. Please return the letter. As if he had never heard of it, and he not only didn't return it, but also opened the secret letter and took out the letter paper. It's too late, and there's no need to be too late. The south crane one side droops the mouth looking at the contents on the letter paper. One side quite don't care of open mouth. The dark way sees this. Also have to temporarily quiet down. It is not surprising that what is written in the letter is what happened today. However, the letter also unexpectedly wrote out the whole truth of the whole thing, with a note at the end that the princess has rested safely. It's obvious that the secret guards are afraid of Yin Beiqing's worries, so they mark a sentence like this, which should be noted every day. If not, with Yin Beiqing's character, seeing this, he would only feel superfluous. He would reprimand them all and forbid to ask any more questions. In this way, it was the Lord's personal instruction. The south crane's eye bottom crossed a touch of jealousy color, and the hand holding the letter paper could not help but make a little effort to deform the edge of the letter paper. Darkway sees this. Eyebrows all ring up, busy want to grab letter paper. South crane, but at this time return to God, will hand toward the position in front of the body received. You are not afraid of trouble, day by day send. We will obey the Lord's orders. Sister Nanha, aren't you? The Darkway smiles and says casually. The south crane Mao color shoe of a cold. The lip cape evokes a few fin light to mock. Nature is. After a pause, she put the things in her hand into the envelope again and said, I'll deliver the letter for you. You don't have to worry about it. In fact, he was only responsible for delivering the letter. He didn't know the content of the letter, but he always felt insecure and hesitated. Seeing this, then he stepped forward and said, I thought that you would be punished if you were late today. I thought that I could send you another letter by the way, and I could find a reason to prevaricate for you. Since you don't want to, I don't want to force you. Then he put the letter into the dark way's hand and turned to go. Ah, Sister Nanha, wait for you. Just after walking a few steps, the boy behind him called out, but the south crane didn't turn back. He just straightened up and said in a cold voice, I'm most tired of being suspected in my life. Don't bother me anymore. The dark way just hissed and didn't dare to shout. However, at the moment, Nanhe, who was supposed to be full of anger, had a slight radiant on his lips, a sarcastic and disdainful look on his brows, a slight chin, and a faint sense of satisfaction. The night was cool. The soldiers at the gate of the city were leaning against the wall of the outer city. They were in a sleepy state, and the gate of the city was a lonely place. A carriage quickly drove to the gate, stopped in front of the gate, and then got off several people, some of them hiding in the side of the gate, standing close to the wall. The rest of the two people see this will go forward, force the big city gate, and shout, Officer, open the door, officer. After a long time, the soldiers who guarded the city were awakened, but they did not open the door. Instead, they stood on the tower and looked down. They said impatiently, Who comes here in the middle of the night? Don't you know that the city gate will be locked after Su Sure? The leader's face was smooth. Seeing this, he quickly raised his head and raised his voice and said, Officer, we are from a neighboring country in business, but our master is suffering from an emergency. We really can't help it. The land outside the city is so desolate that we can't find a doctor. so we have to leave the caravan and come to the city for medical treatment. The soldiers on the tower looked around the carriage below, but they still didn't move. The gate can't be opened. You can find another place. Officer, why don't you come out and have a look? We're really going to die, otherwise it won't be like this. The soldier couldn't see clearly from the top of the castle, and then he didn't know what to think. He yelled, "Wait," and came down. He opened a crack in the city gate and looked at the person standing in front of him. Before he could open his mouth, the former slick man hurriedly came up and smilingly stuffed a bulging purse into the soldier's hand. "Sir, please do me a favor." The soldier bumped the money bag in his hand, but at the corner of his mouth, he didn't notice that there was someone beside the city wall. "People, let me have a look." The man smiles and leads others forward. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the three people who had been hiding in the city wall slipped in quietly from the gate that had not been closed. Under the silver moonlight, at the foot of the city wall where the three were hiding, a few drops of red blood were imprinted on the ground like a brand iron. The soldier, however, did not let go when he saw that there was a real person. He just told them to wait and find a doctor. Then there was no follow-up. Yin Beicheng looked at the secret letter in his hand. After reading it carefully, the dark color at the bottom of his eyes suddenly became dark, and the secret letter in his hand suddenly turned into powder. After that, Mo Ling felt bad. After thinking about it, he said, "Lord, what's the matter?" He had a hunch in his heart that the great event that could make Yin Beicheng angry had to be related to Mo Shanghua. Yin Beicheng's eyes were dangerously black, and his whole body was cold. "The secret letter is false. I'm afraid that someone has been disturbed." There was nothing wrong with the secret letter. The handwriting was the same as usual, but the handwriting was not strong enough. It seemed that it was from a woman. Mo Ling was surprised, and a possibility in his heart was faintly beating out. He couldn't help but cautiously explore. Is it difficult to be, is that Nanha girl? Yin North City did not answer. Mo Ling know that he is so tacit, a cold heart frowned tightly. Nanha is still very useful now. If she did it, it would be troublesome. Thinking about this, he quickly changed the topic and said, "By the way, Lord, we have received the news that those people have entered the city." "Well," Yin Beicheng made a nasal sound from his nose, and then threw a token to Mo Ling. "You are here to clean up the mess. Everyone can listen to you. In addition, immediately prepare a fast horse. I want to go back first." Mo Ling Mei twisted his head, and his face showed hesitation. "But Lord, the troubles left by those people are not small. Many of them need you to do it yourself. You can't leave until the next day at the earliest." Yin Beicheng's eyebrows were slightly wrinkled. His eyebrows were dyed with some strange color. But for a moment, he became more and more cold and indifferent. "I'll call everyone up in a moment. I can't delay it for half a moment, and tomorrow is the same." "Yes." Mo Ling wanted to ask more questions, but when he saw Yin Beicheng's cold face, he couldn't ask any more, so he had to answer. "Take a rest too. Don't delay tomorrow." When Yin Beicheng saw that Mo Ling was still not going, he casually said that until Mo Ling was far away, he was still alone in the house, with a deep look in his eyes, and could not see what he thought. Mo Zhanghua knows that Nanha is a smart person. She will probably guess that she is afraid that Nanha will send someone to kill her. She must think that she will take precautions today, so she won't send someone to kill her. After a few days, she will relax her vigilance. As a result, Mo Shanghua had a very stable sleep that night. In the early morning of the next day, Qinya came to wait on her to get up and wash up. As expected, she said, "Princess, what you expected is really good. There was really no big change last night." After a pause, her voice changed. "However, I was afraid that the others would not bear it, so I arranged more reliable people to watch quietly in the house. When I changed shifts in the middle of the night, I caught a maid, Princess, who was trying to do something wrong. Would you like to have a look?" "Look, it's natural to have a look. Otherwise, how can the master behind her know?" On the street, there's a fine sharp color in the flower eyes, which is like the petal of a flower. "Yes." Qinya put down the bamboo grate in her hand and whispered 2 orders to the boy at the door. After a while, a maid was escorted in by two boys. As soon as the maid came in, she knelt down on the ground and began to tremble. "Maid, I've seen the princess." Seeing her maidservant like this, Chinya stopped humming and said in a low voice, "Since you dare to do this kind of work, why are you afraid to be like this? Now you haven't suffered anything. I'm not going to turn away later." Although the voice is small, but still clear into the maid's ears, her body will shake more severe. How cruel is Imo Shanghua's wrist? No one in the mansion knows. How could she not be afraid now? Imo Shanghua sits upright in front of the dresser. He is still indifferent between his eyebrows and eyes. He doesn't know whether he is happy or angry, but he makes people feel angry for no reason. Time has always been precious. I have many things to do today. I don't want to waste the precious time, so you can tell me by yourself, lest I always ask for trouble. Said, her eyes like water light turn, young open a bit of fierce color. If the delay for a long time delayed my things or half false, you will be thinking about, in the end, how to make amends. The word make amends was repeated in her mouth, as if she had given a verdict. It also made the maidservant clearly realize that the man in front of her could easily decide her life and death, and she had no choice. The maid looked up at the flower on the street, which was still calm and calm. She was more and more frightened. She bit her teeth and thought for a while. Then she didn't dare to delay any more. She was busy confessing. Back to the princess, maidservant. When she was first arranged to come to the dockyard to serve, she got the greeting of Mrs. Yun and asked her to stare at you. But she didn't dare and didn't have a chance to send reliable information. Later, Mrs. Yun was useless, so she followed Mrs. Ping. "So what she told you do yesterday?" The flowers on the street have been expected long ago, but the words are still calm. Maidservant listened to Imo Shanghua's tone, then also understand Imo Shanghua actually know everything, more and more chilly, busy nod like pound garlic. Chinya came forward with a bad complexion and a cold voice. Although she is honest, she is also something to eat. Princess, she should be punished. If it wasn't for someone now, she really wanted to scold Pingji. Although the princess of her family is vigorous and resolute in some things, her servants are never bad, even better than the people in the other courtyard. Therefore, she can't see these people eating inside and outside. Punishment? She is so devoted to Pingji that she is somewhat loyal. How can she punish Pingji at will? In the black and white eyes of the flower on the street, the color of ridicule is getting stronger and stronger. But others can only see a deep Wong, who can't see half of her thoughts. Chinya doesn't understand. Maidservant is more don't understand. All eyes light fall on Imo Shanghua body. Imo Shanghua said in a gentle and clear voice, "Instead of being punished, he should be rewarded. In this way, Chinya, you will take the maid to Pingji's place in person in a moment. Then you will say that I saw her come out yesterday, and there was no one to put on her clothes when she was cold. There was not even a close maid around. The maid is clever and obedient. I like her very much, so I will bear the pain and give it to her." Voice light fall. That maidservant is to drop to sit on the ground. Then keep kowtow. "Princess, don't, princess, you still kill maidservant, please." At that time, Chinya understood the meaning of Imo Shanghua, and her face was a little better. She looked at her maid and said in a cold voice, "If you do something you shouldn't do, you should be punished. Now the princess is out of the law. It's useless if you don't want to do it." Seeing that the maid was still crying, Chinya said directly to the little fellow beside her, "Take her down quickly." The sound of crying in the house disappeared. Imo Shanghua got up and walked to Chinya, casting an appreciative look at her. "Yesterday's work was very good. I'm afraid I can be alone in a few days. I can teach you." Between the words, between the eyebrows, showed a little smile, not the usual sense of closeness. Chinya also bent her lips and laughed, her eyebrows and eyes bent. "Where's the princess?" "Recently, she has begun to be human. I should be happy for the princess." "Human?" Mo flower lips slightly yawn, eyes across a bit of Yu glory, but avoid talking about. "Let's go, to see the situation of Yunji." With that, he walked away. Chinya rushed to catch up with her. As she followed Imo Shanghua, she murmured, "I think she's in good condition. You haven't had breakfast yet." She can't forget Yunji's surly appearance. Imo Shanghua didn't answer. She walked in front of her. As soon as she walked around the front hall, she saw a maid leading Lu Zheng towards her bedroom. Lu Zheng's brow was locked, as if she had something to worry about. "I've seen the princess." The maid first saw the flowers on the street, and then went forward to salute. Lu Zheng just saw the flowers on the street. Maybe he was too anxious. He wanted to go forward directly, and then glanced at the maid who was blessed in front of him. It seemed that he remembered something. He stopped and bent down. "I'll see the princess." No gift. Imo Shanghua saw Lu Zheng's gesture, and she felt strange in her heart. So she asked directly, "Lu Imperial Doctor is in such a hurry, but what can I do for you?" Lu Zheng's eyes looked at the flowers, but he didn't open his mouth. Chinya Eyes Nose Heart busy pointed to the maid, "You go back to do your things, do not have to wait here." Seeing that the man retreated, Lu Zheng pondered for a moment and then said, "I've heard all about yesterday's events. I don't want to ask you anymore. I just want to ask you, are you sure you can cure Yunji?" The flower Mao on the MO once crossed a few minutes surprised. "You just asked this? Don't you hear the rumors from the outside world?" Although she did not deliberately inquire, she also knew that today's external definition is gossip flying around, and she was afraid that she had long been discredited. Moreover, Lu Zheng should not be back to his home for long at this time. It's time for rumors to spread all over the place. "I just came here after hearing about it, but most of the rumors are hearsay. Just take what is credible, and you don't need to listen to others." Lu Zhenglian's eyes were covered with thick and long eyelashes, and he couldn't see clearly. "I didn't expect that Dr. Lu was such a thorough person." The flower's eyes on the street moved, and Lu Zheng's look could not help but supine. To tell you the truth, it's not a problem to cure her serious injury, but it's really difficult to cure her madness. Wei Chen has never heard of such a precedent. It's really tricky. Lu Zheng's brow was wrinkled, and his eyes were a little worried. He thought silently for a while, and then said, "Although Wei Chen's medical skills are shallow, they are of some use. I am willing to do my best to treat Yunji's madness with the princess." Imo Shanghua looks at Lu Zheng, who has already bent down, but he is silent. After a long time, he said, "It's not good for you. Not only that, it may bring disaster to you." Lu Zheng eyebrow heart is not controlled, twist up. Micro-minister no. The flowers on the street are silent again. There's a little confusion in the eyes. Chinya's been with Imo Shanghua for a long time, and she knows something about her psychology. She is also afraid that Imo Shanghua will not cure Yunji and fall into the hands of Nanhe. She just bites her teeth and pulls Imo Shanghua's clothes. "Princess, Dr. Lu is a doctor. I see you want to treat such well. It's natural to yearn for difficult and complicated diseases, and it's so sincere that you come here early in the morning, so you can help him." Even Lu Zheng could not help nodding his head, and there was some unknown color in his eyes. The perplexity in the flower eyes on the street disappeared a little, and nodded. "So good. The strength of two people is always better than one person. As it happens, I'm going to see Yunji. Do you want to go with me?" "Of course." Lu Zheng straightened himself up again, slightly hooked his lips, and nodded with a smile. Yunji is now arranged by Imo Shanghua in the side compartment of the dockyard. After last night, she rearranges it today. There are people inside and outside the house. It's too crowded. Even at the foot of Yunji's bed, Imo Shanghua specially put a few porcelain bottles in the cupboard at the foot of the bed. In this way, all the thieves sneak in and just kick the broken porcelain bottle to save their lives. At this time, Yunji was lying on the bed, her eyes closed, and she seemed to be sleeping. Lu Zheng said hello to Imo Shanghua before he sat down on the stool in front of Yunji's collapse. He put one of her wrists on the wrist pillow and closed his eyes to feel her pulse. From the pulse condition, the chest injury is not stable. There is a risk of fever at any time, and there is too much blood loss. There is still some lack of qi and blood, but these are lighter than the disease of madness. As for the madness, I'll wait for her to wake up and watch carefully. Lu Zheng whispered to himself, and then he jammed Yunji's wrist back and got up to look at the flowers on the street. Mo Shanghua took a few steps forward, and her eyes swept over Yunji's face. Seeing that her face was a little better than yesterday, she nodded slightly. It's really better, but if you want to recover, even if you use my special prescription, it will take at least 1 month. When it is completely stable, you can treat her madness and epilepsy in depth. After such a long time, it's time for Grandfather Wang to come back. Lu Zheng looked thoughtfully in his eyes, and then suddenly raised his eyes. Why don't you and I apply the medicine first, so that her injury can be stabilized as soon as possible until the Lord comes back? The Lord should be thoroughly investigated, so you don't have to cure her madness. Yanbei City, Mo Shanghua whispered his name in her heart and frowned a little. She knew that yesterday. Then he deliberately showed his true face in front of her. Except for her plan, some of them wanted to reveal something to her. For example, her identity. Nanha is arrogant, beautiful and excellent in martial arts. He can't be just an ordinary brothel woman. According to the 8 trigrams Qinya once told her, she seems to have come out of Qinhuan Pavilion. Qinhuan Pavilion is the place where Hua Qianlu lives, and Hua Qianlu is closely related to Yanbei City. When anyone wants to tell Mo Shanghua is about her identity, his status in Yanbei City is different. Even if she did something, Yin Beiqing would not do anything to her. But Nanha has already offended Mo Shanghua. How can she let Nanha go easily? If so, she was framed for nothing yesterday. The Lord dotes on Nanha better than me. Thinking about this, the color of the flower eyes on the street can't help deepening a few. More importantly, why should I let her go for nothing? Her face was cold, and her face was calm. When she said this sentence, it was also light. Only her eyes, like a well that had been silent for many years, were quiet. Lu Zheng saw eat a few minutes. Can't help but pinch his fist. The princess is a lover. The cherry lips on the street were slightly pursed, and they didn't open their mouth, neither admitting nor denying. Lu Zheng sees this, just temporarily to move Mao Guang, Hang Mao to think seriously, and Mo Shanghua, also thoughtfully inside and outside the house to check up. In the house for a moment, in addition to Mo Shanghua's slight footsteps, there is no other sound. After thinking about it for a long time, Lu Zhengkai suddenly looked up and his eyes were slightly bright. I heard in the city yesterday that there was a richest man in the Wu family of the neighboring country. Recently, I somehow got a 100-year-old Jianghe. Unfortunately, the medical skills of other countries were not as good as ours. No one thought it was a treasure, so he wanted to sell it in the imperial city of our country. It's a rare medicine. It's a treasure all over the body. If it's used well, it can even live the dead, flesh and bones. Down the grain, and Mo on the eyebrow light CU. Seem to be some don't believe, but I have never heard of this medicine. No one has found this medicine for more than 10 years, and it's rarely mentioned in medical practice. It's normal if you don't know. However, according to my teacher, it is true that there is such a thing, but it also has miraculous effects. Lu Zheng's face is rigorous, and his words are well-founded. He seems to believe it. And Mo Shanghua puts his hands on the side table consciously, taps rhythmically, and thinks in his eyes, the flesh and bones of the living dead if you are born deaf and dumb, or if you're born with weak legs and feet and can't walk, you may be cured. Lu is being asked by the words of the stranger flower, so it's not clear, but he still nodded his head honestly. Reasonably speaking, it should be okay. Well, you can have a try. If you have a look at Qinya's eyes, the shimmering light in the eyes will soon return to calm. Dr. Lu, do you know where the pedestrian is now? When will you arrive? I heard that I arrived last night. As for the others, I don't know very well. Speaking of the back, Lu Zheng can't help shaking his head, slightly confused. He didn't have much interest in it, so it's not surprising that he didn't know. And Mo Shanghua's hand, which tapped on the table, stopped. Her eyes looked quiet, as if she was thinking about something. A moment later, she said, "In this way, you will go to the residence in the mansion to have a rest. I'll send someone to inquire immediately. While I get the news, I'll make plans. If I have a plan, I'll inform you immediately." Lu Zheng Wenyin agreed with the nod. Well, that micro-minister will leave first. As soon as Lu Zhengfang goes out, Qinya steps forward and stares at the flowers on the street uncontrollably. She opens her mouth, but she doesn't say anything. She looks like she wants to talk, but stops. Mo Shanghua glanced at Qinya, and then he knew it in his heart. He simply admitted it. I know you can't ask, but as you think, I really want to cure you and Qin Lin's deafness. Qinya and Qin Lin are deaf and dumb. She didn't want to cure them before, but they were both brought out of the womb. In this era, she never found any medicine that could be cured, so she's been shelving it. Qinya's round apricot eyes suddenly lit up, and the eyes were pleasantly surprised, unbelievable, and moved. Princess, how can you be so worthy of your servant and brother? The flowers on the street smell the words, but the willow eyebrows are frowning. The eyes are very serious and solemn. It's never not worth it. You two are worth it. Qinya's nose was sour, and her eyes were filled with tears, but she couldn't bear it. Princess, Mo Shanghua silently took out a handkerchief from the sleeve and handed it over. Qinya took the handkerchief, but did not wipe her face. Instead, she held it tightly in her hand and tried to hold back her tears. After a long time, she sniffed and returned the unused handkerchief to Mo Shanghua. Princess, I know you can't bear to see me and my brother like this, but if you really get this medicine and use it on my brother and sister, how about Mrs. Yun's madness? If you can't cure her, then Mrs. Nan will certainly be hard for you. Mo Shanghua takes over the handkerchief. Under Qinya's gaze, the corners of her lips gently lift a radiant. If the first snow melts away, I just praised you this morning. How can you be stupid again now? You don't know whether my medical skills are successful or not. Even if there is no herbal medicine, it's not that you are not sure to cure Yunji well. So far, her eyes look micro-movement like streamer across the general, but is very fast and no one can see. The most important thing is that I will never let Nanha bully me, and she should pay the price for her behavior sooner or later. However, I heard what Dr. Lu said. There's almost no medicine for this madness. Maybe only the herb Jianghe can be used. Thinking of Lu Zheng's flowers, Qinya is still worried and can't help reminding her again and again. The flowers on the road are still Enron, as if they don't care, don't you understand? To me, the meaning of Jianghe is to cure you and Qin Lin. Everything else is secondary. Qinya's nose was sour again. She tried hard to suck her nose. She held back her tears from the corner of her eyes and nodded. I know. Princess, are you really good? So good that I don't know what to say. Mo Shanghua was quite helpless. She gave Qinya the handkerchief and slowed down her voice. You'd better keep this handkerchief. I quietly go out of the house to inquire about the news outside. You can give Yunji some medicine later, and then go to my room to pretend to be me, hide in my room to read and sleep. Remember, don't let anyone else in to avoid being found out. Because she doesn't go out much on weekdays and doesn't like people other than Qinya to be close to her. It's the most reliable way to let Qinya stay in the house. Qinya wiped away the tears in her eyes and said, the maidservant knows. The princess can rest assured. After arranging all the affairs of the dockyard, Mo Shanghua changed into a man's suit and quietly climbed over the high wall of the dockyard. She moved very quickly and neatly. The spy hiding in the dark didn't even see her shadow. Pingji was drinking the new tea cooked by her maidservant, and she laughed with pride. Although she didn't commit the crime of that bitch yesterday, she was defeated by Nanji, the fox girl. I feel happy when I think about it. One of them is the most important, and the other is the most beloved in the government. How can she not be happy now that the fight is like this? Without the two of them, she was the only one of the best beauties in the palace. At that time, the Lord would naturally return to her. She was the most honorable woman in the whole Yuzhou. Think of that kind of scenery. She is uncontrollable smile. The eyes of the color of satisfaction almost overflow eyes to go. Ma'am, something's wrong. Something's wrong. It was just when she was proud that a maid hurried in at this time, and her face was a little ugly. Pingji's face immediately showed her displeasure. She couldn't help scolding. "What's so flustered? It almost broke my good mood, and I can't say it quickly. Madam Hui, it's a maid from the dockyard. She said that there is no one close to you." She was distressed, so she assigned a maid to come and call it's called. The maidservant said smoothly in the front, but he stammered at the back. In any case, he could not say the maidservant's name. Pingji heart a jump, and the heart uneasy, subconsciously a little nervous, grabbed down wooden chair armrest. "Bring people in. Bring people in." The voice falls. C2 small C slipper. A maidservant walked in. Throw maidservant on the ground. One of them said with a smile, "Mrs. Ping, we princess send this girl over. There are a few words to tell." Little C said here to pause for a while, raised head to see the facial expression of a Ping Ji, temporarily some don't dare to open mouth. Seeing this, the other boy took over the conversation. The princess said that the maid, besides Miss Chin, was the most considerate and attentive of her. "How do you treat her?" "I'll leave when I'm finished," said this just with the body side of the small C get up together, back down. As soon as they went down, Pingji's fake smile relaxed, and her eyes fixed on the maidservant who was sitting on the ground. She looked completely gloomy. The maid's face was filled with deep fear, and her body trembled even more than before. "I'm not working hard. Please forgive me, madam." The more she said that, the more gloomy Pingji's face was. After staring at her coldly for a long time, she said, "Has it been done?" She had the answer in her heart, but she was still a little lucky. "Madam Hui, I'm a slave. When I got to the house, I was arrested and arrested." "Waste," Pingji scolded in a sharp voice. Her face was so heavy that she could almost drip water. "Come on, drag this cheap maid down and beat him to death." On hearing this, the maid turned pale and kept kowtowing. As soon as the boys were about to move, Pingji's maidservant quickly came forward. "Madam, you can't do that. She's the one sent by the princess now. She can't move easily. I think the princess must be waiting for you to be cheated." "You can't be cheated if you catch your mistake." Pingji was also angry just now, and she didn't think about it. Now, when she said that, she calmed down a little. After thinking about it, her face turned from black to green and became more and more ugly. Originally, Immerse didn't deal with this cheap maid in private and sent it to her intentionally, not only to disgust her, but also to think of this later if she hadn't calmed down now. But the more she thought of this, the more angry she was. But she couldn't vent her anger, so she said, "I'll throw this cheap maidservant away at once. Don't let me see it." The maid listened to this, but her face was not much better, but she still endured the tears and knelt down and kowtowed. But she also knew that although Pingji didn't say anything, she would never have a good life in the future. When a maidservant was taken down and there were few people in the house, Pingji couldn't help but slap a table on the table. "This bitch, I'm still restless, and deliberately sent such a person to disgust me." Seeing this, the maid quickly poured a cup of tea and served it. "Madam, it's a long time to calm down. We have plenty of time to deal with her." Pingji left the teacup on the table and didn't move. Her eyes crossed a bit of hate. "Bitch, wait and see. I want you to look good sooner or later." People from neighboring countries took Zhanghe to pass by, which is not so important compared with other amazing anecdotes in the city. In order to get more accurate information, Chenghuan Pavilion is undoubtedly the best place. Unfortunately, it is still in the daytime. Chenghuan Pavilion is not open for business, so Hui Qianliu is not here at this time. The flower in the street remembers that people from neighboring countries are just passing by, so they probably won't stay for long. When Chenghuan Pavilion opens in the evening, they go to the tea house and ask for a small table. They drink tea and listen to the gossip discussed by the people at the next table. What she didn't expect was that the story of Zhanghe was not as popular as the story of Mo Shenghua and Nana yesterday. It seems that this matter has become the most popular thing in Yuzhou, and it also makes her reputation worse. If Qinya is here, she will be angry. The flowers on the street seem to be unheard of. After drinking all the tea in the cup, they leave the money on the table and leave. Now that she has inquired about the news, she should go back and make a good plan. It's true that the people from a neighboring country arrived yesterday. What's more, the caravan will stay in the city for a few more days to buy dry food and other things. The man sent by the Wu family, this time, is Master Erfong of the Wu family. He is the most violent force. He is much better than Dafeng. Thinking about this, Imo Shanghua had a preliminary prototype in his mind. After thinking about it, he went directly to a brocade shop in the name of the palace. She is very simple and low-key, but as soon as she enters the shop, the man still greets her with a smile. If she remembers correctly, the shop is under the jurisdiction of Zhang He, which shows that Zhang He is good at training. Imo Shanghua quietly glanced at the shop, nodded in her heart, and looked around. Then she got to the point, "I have some old friends with your manager. Please introduce me." The man didn't think much about it, so he led the flowers to the inner room. The shopkeeper was a stranger. He was at a loss when he saw Imo Shanghua. Seeing this, Imo Shanghua directly took out a token from the palace and threw it to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper was different from the other guys. He knew it, and then he bowed down and saluted. "If you are here, what can I do for you?" Imo Shanghua took the token and said in a low voice, "Go and ask you to take charge of Zhang Hilai. I have something to discuss with him. In addition, this matter is confidential and should not be known to others." "Yes," the shopkeeper answered and called the man in a hurry to invite him. Sure enough, but a cup of tea time, Zhang He was invited to come over. "If you changed Imo Shanghua aimless directly to find, I'm afraid not only can't find people, but also wasted time." Although the flowers on the street were dressed in men's clothes, and their eyebrows were also painstakingly portrayed coldly, Zhang He looked carefully and recognized them. "I've seen a noble man." When he saw that Imo Shanghua was so dressed up, he didn't go to his mansion. Instead, he chose a small shop to meet him, so he cleverly didn't call the princess. "Don't be polite. Get up." Imo Shanghua waved his hand and motioned to Zhang He to get up. "I have something to tell you this time. I will do my best. Please tell me." Zhang He lowered his eyebrows and looked respectful. "Before tonight, I want you to find out which drugstore in the city is going to sell, and then sell that drugstore down. The flowers on the street are calm and quiet, and their voice is as clear and cool as before. If there is no medicine shop, it's okay to have a nearby shop, but it's better to have a medicine shop. It must be set down in the evening." With that, she took out a few banknotes from her sleeve and put them on the table. "This matter can't be recorded. It's all my private account. In addition, this matter must be kept secret and can't be disclosed." Zhang He saw Imo Shanghua's tone, and he knew the seriousness of the matter. He was too busy to reply. "Yes, I will try my best to do it. But I don't know how to hand over the house deed and other things to you after the shop is set down. I'll pick it up tomorrow night," Imo Shanghua said in a light voice, and then stood up from the seat. "These things are for the time being, and I'll give you another order." She wants to walk away, but she seems to think of something. She stops again. "This shop is good, and the shopkeeper is also very good. If I have anything important in the future, I will come to you. Similarly, everything I command here must be shut up and not let out." Zhang, he is a wise man, and his attitude is more and more obedient. "I understand that I will strictly abide by the rules you set." Seeing this, the flowers on the street did not stay much. After looking at the sky outside, they went back to the palace. She just quietly slipped into the dockyard and saw two maids guarding the money in the dockyard, standing with the other two maids, as if they were negotiating something. The distance is very far. Imo Shanghua can't hear the content of their conversation clearly, so she goes straight back to her room and plans to ask Qinya later. She just entered the house. Qinya quickly pulled her over. "Princess, you can come back. Mrs. Ping sent someone over there. Must see you, said that it is Mrs. Dai Ping to thank you." Chun Inger asked several times at the door. I didn't dare to say anything. As if she had thought of something, she could not help but be angry and said, "The people over there, Mrs. Ping, are really cheeky. They have been reluctant to leave. I hate that I can't go out in person. Otherwise, they would have been sent away. It's just too Jiao. There's no need to get angry. You change your clothes and go out to send them away. Now you're asking the Imperial Dr. Liu to come over." The flowers on the street have never moved their eyebrows and eyes, and their faces are still without waves and waves. As she spoke, she began to undress and change her clothes. Seeing this, Chinya immediately nodded to pound garlic and quickly hung her head to change clothes. Maidservants have long wanted to go out, so I'll go to clean them up. Seeing Chinya's urgent appearance, Imo Shanghua can't help but smile. You girl, your temper is really growing day by day. Chinya spat out her tongue, changed her clothes, and went away. Shunner Inger was still talking to the two maidservants. As soon as she saw Chinya coming, she hung her head and said, Sister Chinya. The other two maidservants' eyes flashed, and they didn't know what to calculate. Chinya learns the usual appearance of Imo Shanghua and nods. Her eyes fall on the two maidservants like a sharp edge. Your intention is clear to my princess, but now my princess is still forbidden. It's not suitable for outsiders. You'd better hurry back to Mrs. Ping. Seeing this, one of the maidservants who served Pingji next to her was suddenly restrained and said with a smile, In that case, I'd like to trouble the girl to convey her thanks to the princess on behalf of my wife. After a pause, she opened the wooden box that she had been holding in her hand. There's 100-year-old ginseng in it. Madam means to hope that the princess can get rid of Mrs. Yun's madness as soon as possible. By the way, if ginseng is not enough, there are other herbs for my wife. Don't be polite to the princess. In this way, is the princess deliberately disgusted? Chinya's pretty face suddenly cooled down, and she couldn't help sneering. We princess haven't seen anything good. We're rare this thing. You'd better keep it for your wife to cook in order to make beautiful use of it. After all, women are always easy to get old when they are old. How can we not take good care of it? The maid choked. It seemed that she didn't expect that Chinya was so clever. After a long time, she said, This is my wife's kindness. Don't let it go. You still slander me in every way. What's your heart? Chinya snorted coldly, and her pretty face became colder. What's her heart? I should ask you that. What do you mean? Is it because my wife has no one to protect her? Are you bullying us like this? Since Pingji is very kind, I'll take the ginseng. Chinya is still disputing angrily. She sees that Imo Shanghua is dressed in plain clothes and comes over with a light complexion. However, she stops before reaching the gate and does not leave the dock. See the princess. When they saw this, they saluted one after another. Get up. Imo Shanghua opened her mouth in a light voice, and her eyes fell on the two maidservants. Since Pingji is kind-hearted, I'm really hard up now. It's better to trouble Pingji to bring me more herbs. The maid's face was stiff. Then she saw the flower on the street. She took out a piece of paper full of the name of medicinal materials and handed it over. It happened that she had just said that. At this time, she couldn't refuse. But when she thought of the punishment she would face when she went back, her hand was frozen and couldn't reach out. Seeing this, Chinya couldn't help but gloat. Didn't you put down your bold words just now? Why? Now you dare not take them. Or your wife's words are just words. No, it's not. I'm just a little distracted. The maid shook her head, took it down with a white face, and went back with a white face. As soon as they left, Chinya couldn't help laughing. This little hoof has just been arrogant. Now it's a relief to see her eat shriveled. Imo Shanghua saw this and couldn't help glancing at her. If you're not astringent, you will suffer in the future. But Chinya didn't think so. It's not the princess you are here. Imo Shanghua has been used to Chinya's temperament for a long time. So she doesn't care. After 2 days of leisure, you're going to find Pingji and ask them for the herbs they should inherit today. Now go to ask for Imperial Dr. Lu first. Chinya answered with a smile and went in a good mood. The following day at night, the Qinhuan Pavilion is always very busy. However, in an ordinary box, there's only a stranger and no one to serve. She had been waiting for nearly 2 cups of tea in the house, but the closed wooden door could be pushed open. A man with a greasy face and gorgeous clothes strode in. As she walked, she said with a smile, There are some delays on the way. It's late. Don't blame me, young master. While speaking, he walked to the table. When he saw the appearance of the flowers on the street, he was infatuated. It turns out that this country is not only the beauty of life, but also the beauty of men. I've just been here for a while, and I can't help it. Mo flower eyes across a touch of displeasure, slightly dissatisfied with this person's light float, but still polite to get up and clasp. In the next name, Mo, I'm a young master. I'm Wu Cheng. It's reasonable here. Wu Cheng's face was greasy with laughter. His eyes were all squeezed into a gap, and then he bowed like a flower in the street. Mo Shanghua smiles a little and makes a gesture of invitation. Wu Eri, please sit down. What's the second master, Wu? He's so strange. You can call me Brother Wu. Wu Cheng seemed to have forgotten his age. He sat down and opened his mouth with a smile. Mo Shanghua didn't like this kind of person, but she still had the same expression on her face. She nodded with a smile and then called the maid in. After a while, tea and snacks were served on the table. Jiang Wu looked at the tea and dim sum on the table in the cold room. With a frown, he called down the maid who had not gone out. Only tea and dim sum. Come on, call a girl to sing a song. But the maid looked at the flowers in the street. He frowned slightly, but his face didn't change. He nodded his chin. Before the maid answered, Wu Cheng said, "These teas are meaningless. Change them into drinks." "Just a moment, gentlemen." The maid humbly accepted them one by one. Wine and food, accompanied by beauty, the previous cold in the house, suddenly swept away. Wu Cheng is full of interest from time to time with the hum two songs, pulling the flowers on the street to drink. After a few drinks, he put down his wine and said, "Brother Wu is a pleasant person. I don't like to go around in circles. I'm just wasting everyone's time, so I'll tell you what I've come for." She corrected her face and then continued, "I heard that Brother Wu's caravan is going to the Imperial City to sell medicinal materials, and all of them are precious. To be honest with Brother Wu, I have set up a shop recently, and I plan to open a pharmacy. You must have known that Yuzhou is located at the border, not as rich as other places, and it is short drugs. If you do it, you will make a lot of money, and the Wu family is now the most suitable channel for goods. I wonder if Brother Wu can give me some face and sell me some?" "That's what I think it is." Wu Cheng was not surprised. He didn't know what he thought of, and his face was elated. "You are really short of Yuzhou herbs, such as Cassia obtusifolia, Polygonum multiflorum, and other common things. I just arrived yesterday, and not long ago, an unknown imperial doctor came to ask for a high price." When the flowers in the street heard the words, they scratched a faint color in their eyes, but their face was full of helplessness. "It's not only medicinal materials, but also other Yuzhou. It's not rich. Fortunately, in such a poor place, it's necessary to take medicine. If I can, I hope to have a long-term cooperation with Brother Wu." Wu Cheng has always been a surface light. When he was in the Wu family, he was often scolded by the old master. He was not as good as Da Feng. When he talked about business, he relied on the Wu family's contacts. Now it is also the first time that the Wu family has sent such an important job. His mind is so active that he wants to rely on it to become famous. In addition, he sold a small part of the medicinal materials on his own initiative yesterday. He tasted the sweetness, and his mind naturally became more and more alive. However, Wu Cheng, after all, had been educated by the Wu family and didn't agree. He still looked at the flower with a smile. "Mr. Mo is a handsome boy with excellent ambition. It's just that if you want to have a long-term relationship with my Wu family, you have to look at other aspects." Mo Shanghua took out a ticket from his sleeve and put it on the table. It was mixed with the title deed of the medicine shop. It seems that it was put in it by mistake. "To tell you the truth, I used to do business in Wujuan, but I just came to Yuzhou recently. I want to be a wanderer. Although I don't have a deep foundation, I don't need the most silver. The rest is Wujuan elder brother. You can also inquire carefully in the city." In doing so, she told Wu Cheng that she had the strength. Although Wu Cheng is not very successful, she went to inquire before meeting her, and she was ready for it. Wu Cheng's eyes were all on the cheek of Mo Shanghua. Now seeing this, his eyes could not help but be surprised. But it was just a moment later, and then the eyes of the flowers on the stranger were strange. The stranger is really penetrating in this respect. However, the stranger is young and not deeply involved in the world. Even if he doesn't know that business is not all enough, he needs to be more thorough. Speaking, his eyes like a nail in general, wish to nail in the flower face how also can't move. Mo Shanghua's eyes swept Wu Cheng's greasy face and collected all the evil at the bottom of his eyes, but he didn't feel it. In this way, I'm willing to buy part of the medicinal materials in Brother Wu's hands at twice the usual price. What do you think? Twice. As soon as Wu Cheng heard this, his thoughts disappeared for a moment. He began to calculate in his mind, thinking about how much profit he could make in it, how much he could get in private, and how much support he could get from his family after he went back. His fat face was full of imagination. Although Brother Wu's been far away from the neighboring countries in recent years, he must be clear about the market price of the imperial city. The imperial city is prosperous, and there are many traders from all over the world. Moreover, when precious medicinal materials arrive at the imperial city, the price is only a little more expensive than usual. Only Yuzhou is extremely lack of such things. Can the price be doubled? The voice of flowers on the street is like magic. If there is something like nothing, it will reverberate in people's heart and turn up a little waves. Wu Cheng's mind suddenly jumped up. He drank a glass of wine and pressed his mind down. How do you know what I'm carrying is ordinary? This time, I will bring more rare and precious things than those common things. The flower eyebrow tip lightly picks a few points, a pair of extremely interested appearance. Is what rare thing, elder brother Wu might as well say to see. Also let me understand. Wu Cheng saw that Mo Shanghua was so interested. He was so proud that he put down the wine and clapped his hands. The boy outside answered, then pushed the door in and took out a sheet, holding it in both hands. Wu Cheng raised to lift the foot to have 2 layers of fat, greasy chin. Point to the direction of Mo Shanghua. The small C immediately put the list in front of Mo Shanghua. Mo Shanghua picked up the list and looked at it carefully. She was very serious. This is a list. It clearly records the medicinal materials that the Wu family brought for sale this time. At the back of the list is the intended selling price, but the price of the drugs next to it is very common. However, the top of the list is Jianghe, which is 5,000 liang, but it's just the auction price. It seems that the Wu family really values Jianghe, but they are ready to auction it. If they really need it, they are willing to take it at a sky-high price. Under such a rush, they will make a lot of profits. No business is without fraud. Fortunately, today's people are not really smart. So thinking, Mo Shanghua pretended to be surprised and widened his eyes. What's this descending grain? So high price. Why don't you even know how to lower the grain? It's a rarity in a rarity. Wu Cheng only felt that he didn't know how to buy the flowers on the street. He was more and more flurried in his heart. It said that this thing can live the flesh and bones of the dead. No one could say anything even if the price is raised by several thousand liang. But because it's too rare, it hasn't appeared in more than 10 years. You're too young to know. Yesterday, when the imperial doctor bought those herbs, he also looked like he had never seen the world. Yuzhou is really a remote place, and there are many local people. On the other hand, the flower in the street did not show the surprise in Wu Cheng's imagination. On the contrary, her face became very strange. She looked at him like he wanted to talk and stop. Wu Cheng naturally wondered, "What's wrong with you, Master Mo?" He said so clearly, "Is it difficult for her or not?" Mo Shanghua's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he was considering the use of words. After living for a moment, he said, "To tell you the truth, elder brother Wu, although I'm in the business of medicinal materials, I also have a lot of research on medical skills. I've read no less than 1,000 volumes of medical books, but I've never seen any record of this medicine in the book, and I've never heard anyone mention it. You said it's a rumor, isn't it wrong?" "No way." Wu Cheng didn't believe it. He even raised his voice a little and looked down on it at the bottom of his eyes. "One or two of you said so. I think Yuzhou is small, and no one knows what you're looking for. When you get to the imperial city, some people will recognize you, and they're willing to compete at a high price. The flower on the street is thin eyebrow light CU. The look inside the mouth is more and more strange. Still have other people to also say so? It's the imperial doctor yesterday. He said his surname was Liu. I don't know whether his name was Liu Zheng or Liu Xie or the Imperial Doctor. He didn't know what to do. When Wu Cheng mentioned this, he was both satirical and proud. He said he wanted to save lives, but he put enough Zhanghe to live dead people's flesh and bones. He didn't even look at it and bought other herbs. If he knew he had missed such a precious thing, he would not know how sorry he would have been. Dr. Liu Zhonglu? The flower on the street frowned more closely, and her voice was full of doubt. Dr. Liu came from the imperial city. It is said that Dr. Liu was a famous doctor in the palace, and his family had been practicing medicine for generations. His father had been sentenced by the imperial hospital. He was sent to Yuzhou to cure the epidemic at the beginning. Later, the epidemic was controlled. He was used to the local conditions and customs here, so he stayed. It's not too much to say that he was a miracle doctor. If there is such a wonderful medicine, how can he not know? Wu Qing only knew that Liu was the imperial doctor, but he didn't want to be so big. He was also a little surprised. How could this be possible? That boy really has such a big background. He can never be unaware of it. But they said there's so many people who know this thing in the imperial city. How can there be people who don't know it in the imperial city? No. The more Wu Cheng thinks about it, the more he feels that it's unlikely. His eyes fall on Mo Shanghua again. He sneers. You must be short-sighted and don't know what's good. How can anyone not know such top things? Being said so, Mo Shanghua was not angry at all. He just said, I don't know, but if Imperial Dr. Liu doesn't know, I'm afraid no one will know. I'm afraid I may not be able to get to the capital, even if I have never heard of such a thing. Seeing that Wu Cheng's face was slightly heavy, he seemed to be angry. Mo Shanghua immediately laughed and turned away from the topic. After talking for a long time, we haven't talked about the business. Let's continue the previous topic. I could take all the precious things except Zhanghe and buy them at twice the price. If you like, I will continue to cooperate at this price in the future. If you don't think it's right, even if it's 3 times, you can have one business. This sentence, in addition to descending the grain, was like a small hammer falling on Wu Cheng. Although he was not happy, he could not help saying, You should make it clear first. What about when you get to the capital? Let's talk about it later. If I tell you the truth, Brother Wu, please don't turn around. I don't blame you, just say it quickly. Seeing this, Mo Shanghua hesitated. Her pupils were dark, and she couldn't see any emotion. After hesitating for a while, she said, I just think that this thing is only famous in your country, and most of the famous names are spread by mistake. Maybe there is such a medicine, but its efficacy is not so magical. The most important thing is that no one in our country can recognize your medicine. How can anyone believe your one-sided words and spend such a high price to buy it? Fart. Wu Cheng, who had just promised, was furious. I didn't get this job until I wasted 9 oxen and 2 tigers. How could it be fake? You don't know Jin Xiangyu, and you're full of nonsense. I don't think we need to do this business. With that, he rose up and turned to go. Brother Wu, why don't you think about it in a different way? Maybe there's something unspeakable about it. Not yet to the door, the voice of flowers on the street is light. So calm and profound words. Let the violent whooshing step is also a meal. Cold face turn around. Since ancient times, all the families with big family business and many children have to fight for their family business. Even the royal family will have brothers and sisters, which shows the darkness. After a pause, she picked up the tea she had left for a long time, took a sip of it, moistened her lips, and then continued. I dare to speculate that this matter may have something to do with those things. Brother Wu might as well think about it. If it looks so good and it's so simple, if it's done badly, who will profit from it? Wu Cheng's dark complexion changed little by little with the fall of the voice of the flowers on the street. It was green and white for a while, and it looked rather cloudy and sunny. Following the words of Mo Shanghua, from the time he overheard Defong discussing the matter to the time when he was angry and couldn't cut off his beard, there was something suspicious. Defong was always insidious and oppressed him everywhere. How could he let things out so skillfully and let him pick up such a big bargain this time? At present, The boy's speech is extraordinary, and what he said is reasonable and reliable. He can't find anything to refute. Damn, Da Feng is so insidious and calculating on him. He had already patted his chest in front of the owner of the house and promised. What could he do now? Thinking about this, Wu Cheng's fat face also showed a little helpless and resentful. Seeing this, Mo Shanghua personally brought the wine pot to the 2 glasses of wine, took the 2 glasses of wine, and stepped in front of Wu Cheng. It seems that what I expected is true. I think Big Brother Bi Wu is very worried now. Wu Cheng didn't answer, but his ugly face was enough to explain everything. Mo Shanghua took the wine cup and said, "Actually, I offended some people in Wujuan before and couldn't buy the medicine. I'm stubborn. The more they do, the more I have to make some achievements, and I have no way to do it. How about this? I'll buy all your medicinal materials at 3 times the price, and Jianghe can also be purchased at the price of Centennial Ginseng. In this way, it is also a big income. You can go back and lie about selling it. In this way, you and I can win-win." Then he raised one of the cups of wine in front of Wu Cheng and said, "If Brother Wu wants to, drink this wine." Wu Cheng looks at the wine cup that is sent to him. It's not that he doesn't want to take it, but that there is still resentment in his heart. This kind of emotion drives him to take it for a while. Does Brother Wu still want to sell Jianghe at a good price in the Imperial City? The flower face on the street was dyed with the color of a smile, quietly urging. When Wu Cheng heard the words, he was deeply touched. His eyes were so distorted by the fat. He bit his teeth and took the wine cup. Since Mr. Mo is so sincere then, Second Master Wu might as well wait. He did not finish a sentence. Suddenly a low male voice came from outside the door, and Sheng Sheng interrupted Wu Cheng's voice. Then, the door was pushed open, and a black robe, with extraordinary temperament and ordinary appearance, stepped in. The flower on the street cuts water. Autumn, pupils suddenly a dark, complexion, tiny coagulation. Who are you? How long have you been here? She has excellent martial arts. She didn't realize half of this person's breath before. Who is he? Wu Cheng was also startled by the sudden person. His narrow eyes couldn't help but squint and looked at the man carefully. When they looked at him like this, his face was half unchanged. His eyes were long and narrow, dark, and his breath was calm and introverted. His dark pupils swept on the flower for a moment, almost imperceptibly scratched something, and then recovered as before. It doesn't matter who I am. What's more, I can offer a higher price to help you through this difficulty. The following words are just to Wu Cheng. You? What do you have? Who knows what your purpose is? Wu Cheng also has some brains. He has never seen the people in front of him, and he doesn't know the details. How can he easily believe them? The man clapped his hands in no hurry, and then a man in Schwani came in with a wooden box about 1 inch long and half an inch high. After closing the door, he put on the table and opened it. The box was full of golden gold, which was dazzling. Wu Cheng didn't take over his family business. Of course, he had never seen such a situation before. He couldn't help taking a breath. What's the meaning of this? The man looked at Wu Cheng with a faint smile, but there was no half smile in his eyes. These are enough for all your medicinal materials? The flower eyebrows in the street jumped heavily, and the delicate cheek suddenly became cold. You should be a businessman, but you don't know how to come first and then. If you do this, you are robbing business on purpose. The man's smile on his lips remained unchanged, and his eyes fell on Mo Shanghua. Business is based on honesty. Girls have to hide their gender. How can it be regarded as honesty? Besides, I'm not a businessman at all. I just want these drugs to be useful. The autumn pupil, who is as calm as an ancient well, is shocked. Who is this person in the end? How can he see through her daughter's identity all of a sudden? Wu Cheng also suddenly turned his head and looked at the flower. He looked at the flower carefully from top to bottom. After his eyes touched the small ear holes on a round earlobe, he was also shocked. Are you really a woman? I said, where is such a white and beautiful man? Mo Shanghua's panic was only for a moment. She soon calmed down and explained, "It's inconvenient for women to act. I just came out disguised as a man. I didn't mean to hide it. If not, I'm afraid I can't get into Qinghuan Pavilion today." It's not so much a crime for this girl to hide. The man sees this, somehow, also quietly helped to explain Wu Cheng, because Mo Shanghua is a woman's identity exposure. The suspicion in the heart also reduced down. The man's eyes slowly fell on Wu Cheng again. However, it was the girl who broke the rules first. No matter what, just on the price, Wu Yi should know how to choose. If you really don't want to, I won't force you. As the voice fell, the dark clothes attendant beside him closed the wooden box again. The meaning was self-evident. Mo Shanghua's lips slightly pursed, and his eyes swept around the man before falling on Wu Cheng again. His face was brilliant. "Brother Wu, people always pay attention to gratitude. It's me who helps you break the plot. If you leave me now, it's a bit ungrateful." She has no extra money in her hand now. Otherwise, she would not use this method to stimulate. Wu Cheng stares at Mo Shanghua and sneers. In addition to anger, there is more lust in his pupils. "Don't play this game with me. If you're sincere, you might as well serve me well. It can be regarded as atonement for your previous deception," said his salty pig hand, then toward Mo Shanghua's cheek stretched out to come over. Mo Shanghua stepped back, dodged Wu Cheng's salty hands, and put a layer of frost on her delicate cheek cage. "Wu Yi had better show some respect. It's so unwise. I'll see how you can survive without my help." Wu Cheng glanced sarcastically at the flower on the street and turned to smile at the man. The fat meat on his face almost squeezed his facial features out of shape. Originally, he didn't think much about the embarrassment of Mo Shanghua, but now he only thinks that Mo Shanghua has to dress up as a man because it is a woman, and he is paying such a price to buy it. It can be said that in the end, people are all benefit-oriented. Now, with better conditions on his face, how can he give up? In this way, I'd like to trouble Mr. Wu to guide us and take us to get the herbs. When we get the herbs, they will be handed over to you naturally. The man was clearly laughing, but he couldn't feel the slightest emotion fluctuation on his body. There is a layer of unexplained momentum around him. This kind of momentum makes Mo Shanghua feel faint. It seems that he has seen a person with the same characteristics somewhere, but when he thinks about it carefully, he can't remember. Until Wu Cheng followed the man to leave with a smile. She just closed her eyes, Lume tightly locked into a ball, eyes a little angry. It's not that she didn't want to get involved, but the situation is settled and she can't fight anymore. What's more, this person can see through her identity at a glance and almost get to the bottom of her plan. If she doubts and fights, this person can't say for sure. He will directly break all her plans and make a fish out of the water. I have to say that this kind of feeling of being cut off on the way is really angry and funny. But the flowers on the street are not willing to suffer in vain. No matter who this person is, if you want to deceive her, you must give it back. Her previous silence, of course, is also for the next step. So think Mo Shanghua busy step out, found Qinghuan Pavilion bustard. The bustard is a member of Qinghuan Pavilion, who have been told more or less by Hui Qianliu. Therefore, as soon as she saw the flowers coming, she raised her lips and began to laugh. "Momu, young master, why don't you come out of this meeting? Why don't you stay a little longer and watch the time? My young master should be back." "No, I have something to deal with. I can't wait any longer." Mo Shanghua shook her head and her voice was indifferent. "My mother has been entertaining me in the hall, but I have seen two men in black clothes. They're all ordinary looking. One of them even carried a wooden box and just went out with me. Although these two people are ordinary and they're not conspicuous in the crowd at all, one of them is holding a box and Wu Cheng is more conspicuous. Naturally, the bustard has some impression, but it has some impression. I don't know why Mr. Mo asked. Mention these two people, and Mo Shanghua's face is slightly positive. Please, mother, will those two people's faces down. Wait for your son to come back. In the matter to him, ask him to help pay attention to these two people." Seeing the face of flowers on the street, the bustard knew that it was not easy. Even if she nodded her head, "Don't worry about it. I will tell you exactly when you come back. She is with the flower guarantee. Behind suddenly came the flower thousand willow clear voice. What things to tell me? As he spoke, he had already bypassed the bustard and came to Mo Shanghua. He bowed slightly and looked at Mo Shanghua with the usual frivolous smile on his lips. I'm here now. If you have something to do with Mo Shanghua, you can tell me directly. However, 1 yard to 1 yard. The commission should be half a cent. Hua Qianlu is the leader of Qinghua Pavilion. His strength will not be weak. If he is taken, the advantages are far more than the disadvantages. The moment Mo Shanghua saw Yin Beicheng, she quickly measured it in her heart. She immediately grabbed Yin Beicheng's sleeve, dragged him through the hall, and walked out. It's urgent, I'll talk while I walk. When Hua Qianlu reacts, his baggy robes have been pulled off his shoulders. He quickly follows him while pulling his collar. He yells, "Take it slow, little Mo Hua. My dress has been cut out these days. It's rare. Don't drag it for me." The flower on the street suddenly appeared in her mind. With a huge abacus in her arms, she sat there and knocked out all kinds of expenses to be compensated. Thinking of this, she suddenly released the half sleeve in her hand. Then you follow closely. Before she could spit out the last she almost fell on the ground pressed by Hua Qianlu's body. She quickly turned around and pushed people away. What are you doing? Hua Qianlu touched his nose innocently. I didn't mean to, but I can't help you stop suddenly because you have so much strength. The curving radiant of the frown on the street was just a little flat. He turned around again and said, "Just follow me. I'll tell you the details later." Hua Qianlu saw that although Hua was still indifferent, she was not joking when she was a little nervous. She was not joking and followed her closely. Out of this flower street, there are obviously fewer people on the street. Only a few pedestrians are walking on the road. As a result, they did not shy away from it. They directly carried their lightness skills and speeded up their journey. On the way, Mo Shanghua and Hua Qianlu briefly talked about the matter, and their destination was Wucheng's Inn. But Yuzhou is so big. Plus the two people's previous delay of some time. When they arrived, Wu Cheng had loaded all the herbs into the car and handed them over to the previous man. The man Fong had another entourage, which was full of 3 carts. He drove away in a roofless carriage. Wu Cheng followed him and said goodbye with a smile. The flowers on the street and the willows on the street are hiding on the roofs of the houses on both sides of the street. Seeing this, they quickly look at each other and get up on the roof. On the one hand, they pay attention to the movements of several people below, and on the other hand, they follow them carefully. In the silent night, the sound of the carriage while rolling on the ground is very clear, which covers the slight sound of the flower stepping on the tile occasionally. The 3 people in that line are not aware of it. They just continue to drive the carriage quietly, and there is no communication between them. Mo Shanghua secretly observed the 3 people and noticed that they didn't communicate with each other. However, she didn't have time to think about it. It's really that her current situation doesn't allow her to think so much. She has been in this world for several months, and she has little time to practice martial arts. Although she is relaxed, she is still much worse than this man. If she keeps doing this, it will only be sooner or later. Thinking of this, her willow eyebrows slightly frowned for a few minutes. When she was worried, Hua Qianlu, who had been following her, stopped. He seemed to see the trouble of flowers on the street and pulled the corner of her dress. When she turned around, he patted her on the shoulder. Mo Shanghua looked at his thin but broad shoulders along the line of sight and suddenly came over. Looking at the current situation, she didn't think much about it. She just felt that in order to complete the task, she didn't show any affectation. She nodded and climbed on the back of Hua Qianlu. Hua Qianlu carries Mo Shanghua on her back and carefully passes her hands through her knee socket. Normally, she looks frivolous, but her hands are clenched into fists at this time, without touching her legs. If other women notice this, I'm afraid they've already made a secret wish for it. They are not as careful as other women in this respect, and they don't understand the amorous feelings at all. She just stares at a line of 3 people who are about to turn into the alley in the street below and whispers in the ear of Flower Willow in a flat voice, "Come on, they're going into the alley." It's really a woman. He didn't pay any attention to him. Make complaints about the thousand Lou's heart. He still nodded, and his footwork continued to run, and he pursued in front of him. Clearly, it is easy to step on the sound of tiles, to the foot of the Flower Willow, but like the soft soil in general, not a sound. In this way, the speed did not drop at all, always followed the people not far or near. The 3 of them walked in the city of Yuzhou in a carriage. After winding around for a long time, they stopped in an alley near the north gate. Although the alley is close to the gate, it is a remote place far away from the center of the city. The residents around it are not rich, and most of them are ordinary small households. The 3 carriages were parked in front of the door of an ordinary household. Previously, the man's carriage was the closest to the door. He had just stopped the carriage, and the people behind the 2 carriages trotted all the way to open the door. The man took it for granted. He whispered to them and didn't know what to order, so he stepped in. When the other 2 saw the man go, they went in, took a few boards, spread them on the threshold, and led the 3 carriages in turn. The flowers on the street come down from the back of Hua Qianlu. They both watch the movements of the 2 people below, with breath holding, waiting for the opportunity. After they led the carriage in, they waited for about a cup of tea. The door was still as quiet as before. The flowers on the street nodded to the flowers and willows. Flower thousand willow understanding. 2 people, this just light one jump, directly fell on the ground toward that door close. Just now some distance from here, nothing to feel. Now, a fall in the door, holding his breath, the 2 eyes are a bit different color, standing in the same place, did not move. Mo Shanghua thought about it, took out a small porcelain vase from her sleeve, poured out 2 milky white pills, handed one to Hua Qianlu, and left one for herself. Flower Willow took the pill, but did not eat, but in the hands of watching carefully, pick eyebrows to look at the flowers' silent inquiry. At this time, it's really inconvenient to talk. Although the flower on the street shook his head, he took out a small bag of powder wrapped in oil paper and exchanged a look with Hua Qianlu. Hua Qianlu nodded, swallowed the pill, then suddenly stepped forward and kicked the door open. The 2 men in black clothes who had been guarding the back of the door were a little caught off guard. Fortunately, they reacted quickly enough and stepped back a few steps. At the moment when the door was opened, the flower on the street raised her hand, and the white powder immediately diffused in the air, which disturbed people's sight and could only barely see the figure clearly. The smoke and dust dispersed, and the 2 Xuani people coughed uncontrollably. Combined with the effect of drugs, their movements were a little slow. In this way, even if the 2 men's martial arts are first class, when they fight with each other, they're constrained everywhere and soon fall behind, and the more they fight, the slower they move. In the end, the man fighting with Mo Shanghua fell to the ground directly because of the effect. The man in Xuani, who Hui Qianliu was dealing with, was knocked to the ground before the medicine had time to work. Making such a big noise, the man who had been in for a long time didn't come out. Mo Shanghua took out the dagger he hadn't pulled out just now, held it tightly in his hand, carefully bypassed the 3 carriages, and approached the house. Hua Qianlu is still clinging to the fan, walking side by side with the flowers in the street, but it is rare in her eyes. She is serious without a smile. The sound of their steps was very light, and there was no sound when they stepped on the ground. There is no movement in the whole hospital, and they could not even detect the breath of people. Mo Shanghua pinched the dagger with one hand, pushed the door open with the other hand, and had a panoramic view of the things in the house. Step into the door. The second step has not yet stepped out. Mo Shanghua will hand horizontal in front of Flower Willow body. A light fell at the foot. Flower Willow along his line of sight to see, then see the foot of an inch of position across a very thin silk line. Should be no doubt. Mo Shanghua didn't care so much. After telling her, she deliberately pulled out the hairpin and threw it down. such as waterfall green silk wantonly pour. The moonlight is soft and illusory, reflecting the side face of the flowers on the street adds a bit ethereal. Beauty like this, flower thousand willow for a while unexpectedly is unable to move an item. At the same time when the silk thread was broken, the two tables smashed towards the place, and a loud bang brought their thoughts back. Crossing the broken table before I had time to look at it carefully, a man suddenly flew down from the roof beam. His sword was strong and pointed at the flower willow. Hua Qianliu's reaction is very fast. He is vigorous and avoids fighting with him quickly. Both of them are excellent in martial arts, and they are equal in fighting. It's hard for others to interfere. If you don't know what to do, you just stand still and watch the battle. But after a long struggle, there was no result. So they took another bag of powder and scattered it in the air as before. But she didn't know that the man had already lost, and he would lose for a long time. As soon as the powder came out, the man's brow tightened tightly, and the killing power in his hand decreased a lot, so he wanted to escape. Hua Qianliu, who is willing to let him escape easily, has been chasing. Mo Shanghua looks at the man who has slowed down a lot, and his lips say, 3, 2, 1 dash the word stop. As soon as the sword in the man's hand is loose, he falls to the ground. Hua Qianliu wiped the sweat stains on her forehead and sighed. This boy's martial arts is not weak. He can resist injuries for so long. If it wasn't for your powder, I'm afraid he would have to pester for a while. Said his face, then hung up to smile again. Small M.O. flower, you but save my life, in the future can let me well repay is. I wrote it down. He was joking, but he nodded his head, then stepped up to the man's side, squatted down, and rummaged over him. Hua Qianliu's face changed greatly and yelled, I forgot. You're a black-hearted man. How can I give you a chance to kill me? It's of your own volition, not my compulsion. In front of his chest, he turned out something wrapped in a cloth bag. When he opened it, it was exactly the same as what Lu Zheng had described. I think this person is also for the convenience of taking Jianghe, so it's treated like this. The stems and leaves are damaged, but fortunately, they're still healthy and can continue to be used as medicine. He put down the grain. He thought that Hua Qianliu had just said that he was hurt, but he didn't find it when he was watching the battle. He felt a little curious, so he took a pulse in front of the man. With this exploration, we found that the person's qi, blood, heart, and pulse were damaged. What's more, besides the enchantment she had just fallen into, there was also a kind of poison that could attack at any time. I'm afraid it's not easy for me to have a serious injury and be as good as Hua Qianliu. Thinking about this, I can't help but get more complicated when I see the man's eyes. How could such a person with extraordinary bearing and excellent martial arts come to this place when he was seriously injured? Did he have any purpose? Did he just want to lower the grain and save his life? But now, no matter whether it is or not, she can't allow this person to cut off his beard and fight with her. Whether this person lives or dies depends on his own fate. What are you thinking? When Hua Qianliu saw her squatting there for a long time, she didn't know what she was thinking, so she came over and stared at the man curiously. Nothing. Mo Shanghua shook her head and went out. Flower Willow did not get up, staring at the man's ordinary face, heart move, as if to think of something in general, raised his hand to touch the man's jaw. It doesn't feel as smooth and delicate as ordinary people's skin. If you look at it carefully, it's common for a man who practices martial arts all the year round to have rough skin, but he always feels that something is wrong. Just as he was about to touch the man's cheek, Hua Qingling's voice came from the courtyard. Is it difficult for the Lord to settle down here? Compared with here, I prefer to sleep in the bank. Flower Thousand Willow hand action to Enxia. Also did not think much, smiled to sing of get up and come out. After solving the current problems, they did not continue to use lightness skills. They walked leisurely on the street. At that time, the night was deep and the streets were very quiet. Only the sound of the watchman beating the gong came from time to time. Mo Shanghua's face is light, and she walks in front. Hua Qianliu shakes her folding fan. and her lips smiled behind her. For a long time, Imo Shanghua stopped and turned to look at him. In front of him is the location of Chenghuan Pavilion. Go back. There's no need to see him off. Besides, thank you for today's business. Easy to say, easy to say. Hua Qianliu's lips are smiling and his eyes are clear. As soon as my son is kind to his heart, my friend's wife has something to ask for, so I'll try my best to help him. Therefore, I won't charge you this time. The flowers on the street pursed their lips, and the slight suspicions at the bottom of their heart disappeared. They all said that there is no business without fraud. Now it seems that it is true, it's natural. Hua Qianlu is not annoyed, but is very popular. It's not early. I'll send you back first. After 2 days, you can come to Chenghuan Pavilion and have a drink. I think so, but let's forget about seeing you off. I'm a very weak woman. Even if I meet gangsters, it's all their bad luck. I'll be fine. Hua Qianlu helped himself, but he didn't refuse. He was not used to seeing him off, so he didn't agree. Hua Qianlu burst out laughing, not half disappointed, but joked, I forgot that you are a famous shrew in Yuzhou City. I heard that Brother Beicheng is not your opponent. Imo Shanghua was completely immune to this, and her face remained the same. She said something and went back. When she said it, she seemed to think of something in general and suddenly said, By the way, you should remember that man's appearance, right? I don't know the origin of this man. He's a bit strange. I'd like you to help me investigate him. This person is a little strange. If you don't say it, don't worry. I will visit you carefully. When Hua Qianlu thought of this person, she felt strange in her heart, so she responded directly. Then I'll come back to you on time in 2 days. The flower on the street looked at the dark sky above her head, and then turned to leave. Hua Qianlu didn't go, but stood in the same place, looking at the body shape of the flowers on the street, and a kind of unclear thought came into his quiet eyes. When Imo Shanghua returned to the mansion, it was already dark. Qinya seemed to have been waiting for her for too long. When she was very tired, she sat on the table and slept with her eyes closed. Imo Shanghua takes a small quilt and puts it on for Qinya. He extinguishes the candlestick in the room and returns to his bedroom. He takes Jianghe out again. It's not like the usual medicine. It's blue in color. It's as low as sand. Its branches and leaves are sparse, but it's the size of a palm. It looks good against the warm candlelight. However, the specific efficacy of Moshanghua is still not clear. I simply took a wooden box and put things away. I took the medical books and read them. I didn't go to sleep until it was about to light up. The next morning, Qinya wakes up in the small bed, looks at her clothes, and knows that Imo Shanghua has already come back. She runs to her bedroom. As soon as Imo Shanghua opened her eyes, she saw Qinya's pretty cheek. She simply stopped sleeping. She got up to dress and said, You should not have slept well yesterday. You'd better have a rest. I'll be fine. Don't worry, princess. It's you, princess. When did you come back yesterday? I look at the medical books on your desk. Haven't you been reading the medical books all night? And you'll go to bed at dawn? Qinya's main concern at this time is not Jianghe. What she's more worried about is to cure her and her brother's mute and deaf stranger Shanghua. Seeing that Qinya's eyes were pure and sincere, Imo Shanghua can't help but feel relieved. It's okay, but it's late when I come back. I've been tossing about for a long time, and I'm not sleepy. I just read some medical books. What she read last night were ancient books that she didn't have time to read. After a long time, she found a few words about Jianghe, but she still knew very little. She still needed to study them carefully. After all, there was only one Jianghe, so she had to be careful not to waste the hard-won thing. Qinya reproached herself and could not help but bow her head. Princess, I know that you're doing this for me and my brother, but it's more for my own sake. After all, if you're good, you can be my right hand. Besides, I'm not hurt. I'm not hurt. You don't have to think that the flower on the street thought about it, and then relieved. She said such warm words, but her face was still calm. No waves and no waves. Qinya was even more moved, but she didn't want to spend time on the street, so she nodded her head in a hurry. I know you're sleeping, Princess, when you wake up, I will let them pass on food. Emo Shanghua shook his head and got out of bed. No need. Now, let's have dinner. After dinner, you call Dr. Liu directly. I have something important to discuss with him. Qinya knew that the words of Emo Shanghua couldn't be changed, so she could only nod her head helplessly. Yes, the maid is now passing on the meal, but Princess, you should have a good rest in the evening. The delicate chin dots of the flowers on the street should be placed. Qinya transferred all the people in the house, and then she went to the outside of the house to guard, leaving only 2 people on the street to discuss. Seeing no one else, Liu Zhengkai sat down at the invitation of Emo Shanghua. Wei Chen waited here for a long time yesterday, but when he went back, he didn't see the princess coming back. I don't know what trouble the princess met yesterday. Can Jianghe get it smoothly? He took advantage of Yunji's sudden illness to stay a little longer yesterday. It's past the closing time of Chenghuan Pavilion, and no one is there for fear of change. There were some small episodes, but there was no danger. Jianghe had already got it. Yesterday, that is not a smooth process. Emo Shanghua is also just an understatement. Lu Zheng was also a thorough person. Seeing that the flower on the street was unwilling to say more, he did not ask any more. He was just relieved inside. There are still omissions in such a comprehensive plan. I think the value of lowering grain is really considerable. Speaking of this, he deeply admired the wisdom of Emo Shanghua. She just went out to inquire about it. When she came back, she had already made a quick arrangement and completed a small part. But what Emo Shanghua told him was that he bought medicinal materials from Wu Cheng at a high price, but he deliberately avoided Jianghe and pretended not to know. Even if Wu Cheng didn't believe it, he would plant a seed in his heart. Fortunately, Wu Cheng is here, not Wu's big house. Otherwise, I'm afraid I can't cheat him at all. After all, Emo Shanghua's plan is only aimed at Wu Cheng, who is impetuous, stupid, and not valued by his family. Wu's family is 10 times smarter than him. Otherwise, he can't get into such a situation. Emo Shanghua recalled some of the contents about Jianghe that she had read yesterday, and said softly, I read some ancient books yesterday, and I have got a general understanding of them. The flesh and white bones of the living dead are exaggerations, but they are not much different. It's magical, but there is no record of how to make medicine in ancient books, and there are no examples in previous years. That's why I'm here. Under the gaze of Emo Shanghua's eyebrows, he took out an ancient book and a yellow book from his sleeve. Isn't it? Emo Shanghua leaned forward slightly, and her eyes fell on the 2 classics. It's really something about Jianghe. Lu Zheng nodded and picked up the yellow and untitled book. However, this one should be different. This one is a medical book recorded by the master himself when he was alive. It's also his life's hard work. Lu Mei, a flower in the street, frowned and didn't reach out to pick it up. That should be very important to you. It's from the school. How can you? She was quite surprised that this kind of thing should be passed on to her disciples and never shown to others. Master, his old people always uphold medical ethics. If he can spread his medical skills, he will be happy. Lu Zheng smiles at Emo Shanghua. His eyebrows and eyes are warm. I have marked the past cases and treatment methods of Jianghe and madness in these 2 books with a red ink pen. You can take them back and study them. Time is the most precious thing. If you spend your time searching for information, I don't know how much time you have to waste. After a long time, it's hard to avoid long dreams. Lu Zheng can save her too much time this time. She really has no need to refuse. In this way, Emo Shanghua thought about it and accepted it gladly. Thank you for your trouble. Thank you very much. Don't mention it. Although I promised to treat with you, I can't help you too much. What I can do is nothing. That's enough. It's an important step for me. Emo Shanghua's face looked at Lu Zheng seriously, and his tone was more serious. In a word, thank you very much. Lu Zheng dropped his eyelashes and gave a little smile. Because of this smile, his handsome eyebrows and eyes were more moist, but no one could see that the bottom of his eyes was gone quietly, a touch of loss. By the way, what's the matter with Wu Qing now? If he discovers something wrong afterwards and comes back to seek revenge, how can you deal with it? Mention this matter. Lu Zheng's lip smile immediately gathered a lot. Mo Shanghua had thought about it for a long time and said calmly, "It's certain that he will seek revenge, but there's no need to be afraid of him. At that time, you just need to show your identity as a royal doctor in the palace, and he will not dare to do anything. After all, this is not another country. He is a person from another country. How dare he pick up any trouble here?" After a pause, she said, "As for me, I didn't use my real identity. I was in the palace all day. Even if he wanted to find me, he couldn't find me. As for that shop, it's just an empty shell. Let's put it aside for a while. When he went, there was no one. However, he will not be able to guarantee who is the target of his revenge." Thinking of this, her mind instantly gushed out of that ordinary man. Cut water autumn pupil micro-turn, eyes color gradually turn thick. Lu Zheng's eyes crossed a little puzzled and could not help saying, "What's the meaning behind this?" "Nothing. You don't have to worry about it anyway." Mo Shanghua shakes her head and doesn't want to say more. When Lu Zheng saw this, it was not easy to say anything more, so he got up to say goodbye and didn't stay. Mo Shanghua asked people to send Lu Zheng out. After thinking about it, they put away the classics temporarily and went to Yunji's house instead. The medicine on the street is extraordinary. The man and his subordinates will wake up after a whole night's sleep. When I wake up, the grain that I got without any effort is also gone. The man's face was suddenly gloomy, and the dark color in his eyes almost dripped out of the water. The air pressure in the whole room dropped to the lowest point, depressing and depressing. Two men in black knelt on the ground, their heads buried very low, and even their breath was as low as possible. The man sat in front of the collapse. His eyes were gloomy, but he didn't speak for a long time. He didn't mean to punish or forgive, so people couldn't guess what he thought. Only he knew that he was not only angry about the loss of Jianghe, but also interested in the Princess Yu from the imperial city, Lu Qianqian. Last time, he knew that she was different. Now it seems that she is different. She is resourceful. In addition, in Yuzhou, the Emperor Tiangao is far away, and there is no one to control her. There is also the poison technique and martial arts. Each one seems to be telling that she is really different from before. Cough. When he was thinking about it, his throat itched, and he coughed, covering his chest. The whole chest vibrated uncontrollably, and the wound on his shoulder was also touched. It was very painful. Your Highness Dash, seeing this, the two people who kept their heads down raised their heads. The man raised his hand. Two people's voice suddenly lowed down. Not ask more. It's not your fault that the comber really has the advantage this time, so there will be no penalty. A man is not stupid. Now, he has only these two people around him. Naturally, he won't let himself fall into a state where no one can use him. Both of them looked at the man in some surprise. After a few seconds, they quickly bent over. "Thank you for your grace. How's everything I asked you to look up?" The man nodded. His face recovered as usual, and he could not see the weak state that had just affected the injury. "His Highness Hui, it has been confirmed that Princess Yu has been back for 4 or 5 days. King Yu did not follow him. It is said that he is still in Wujuan and will come back in a few days. No one knows the exact time. If it's him, I used to look down on him." The man's Mao-color shoes one deep. The lip cape evokes one to put on the cool color. Now the time is right. There is a sudden mutiny in Yangzhou, and the strength of the people who have increased sharply must have something to do with Yanbei City. The official used to be mediocre, but his later movements were so beautiful that he was caught off guard and destroyed all his movements. At that time, he felt incredible. Now it seems that Yin Beicheng is the one who really plays the role of pig and eats tiger. If he is joining hands with his princess, he may become a serious trouble in the future. What's more, he is almost dead now. He can't get out of Yuzhou, but the poison on his body is puzzling. If he attacks one day, he will surely die. Seeing that he had not spoken for a long time, one of the Schwani people hesitated for a while, but said, "Your Highness, there is one more thing for your subordinates to report. Most of the people in Yangzhou have been arrested. One of the remaining people is taking refuge, one is struggling, and a small group of people are on the run. Send someone to pick up the team and hold them down." The man Mao color sank a few minutes, silent for a while, just again Wei, can drag how long is how long. Isn't this for death in this way? The two men did not mean to disobey. As soon as the voice fell, the man said, "My subordinates are willing to go." "Well," the man light Mao inside a cool thin. "Your Highness, I beg your pardon. What should I do now about your injury?" All the doctors in Yuzhou City are rubbish Schwani people mention this matter. Tone can't help aggravating, a rather angry look. The man didn't open his mouth for a long time. There was a touch of thoughtful color in his eyes. After a long time, he suddenly raised his eyes, and the gloomy color in his eyes was replaced by In addition, he could not see the emotion beside him. Nature is still the truth, and the most dangerous place is the safest. Now that we have arrived at the tiger's den, we might as well have a look at the entrance to the tiger. Then he raised his hand suddenly, felt for a while behind his ear, seemed to grasp something, and then gently lifted it towards the front. A human skin mask as thin as cicada wings appeared in his hand. At the same time, an angular and beautiful face was exposed in the air, which was Yin Moli, who should have been in the imperial city. Through the gap of the crystal bead curtain, Emo Shanghua can clearly see the cloud G behind the curtain. At this time, she has woken up. She can't get out of bed yet, but now she has a childlike temperament. Sometimes she is a shrew, and most people can't be deterred. For example, at this time, a coat stood by the bed and said impatiently, "No, the princess has ordered. You can't get out of bed now anyway." When Yunji saw that the servant girl didn't comply, she suddenly changed her face. She looked at the servant girl in a gloomy and strange way. She didn't say anything until she was numb. Madam, you talk to me like this. Come here, I'll take you down with me." Such a frightening remark came out of the strange-looking Yunji's mouth. The maid didn't doubt the truth of this. She was so weak that she almost fell down. "Yunji, you haven't lost your life. You really want to take people down? I'm afraid it's impossible." Emo Shanghua saw this, then opened the curtain and went in, speechless. The little maid was relieved when she saw the flowers on the street. "It's Yunji. She has a strange face just now." When she sees the flowers on the street, she suddenly screams. She pulls up the brocade quilt and holds a corner of it tightly. The bad guys are coming. Help, help. No, kill you, just kill you. Yunji's eyes were dull and low, and the more she said, the more excited she was. Her face was frightened and crazy and strange. In such a long time, she suddenly covered her head with brocade, as if she could be completely isolated from the outside world. Has she been like this these 2 days? Cloud G this side is obviously can't talk. Emo Shanghua then turned to look at the small servant girl before. Back to the princess. Since Mrs. Yun woke up in the evening yesterday, she has been dull and silly, but it is not as terrible as it is now. Speaking of the back, the voice of the little servant girl trembled. In this way, Yunji's madness is not too serious, and will be stable for a period of time. There are not many serious cases. Moreover, it seems that every time she is stimulated to get sick, it is because she's so thinking. Emo Shanghua took a handkerchief out, tied it on her cheek, covered her cheek, and then stepped forward. Before the collapse, Chinya anxiously drags the corner of the flower on the street. "Princess, this woman is crazy. I'm afraid she dares to do anything. It's better to be a slave." "You forget again. How can I do a losing business?" Emo Shanghua gives Chinya a reassuring look, then whisks her hand away and comes forward to lift the brocade quilt. Yunji screamed again, just like a frightened fawn, shrinking towards the foot of the bed in a panic. Mao Guang's panic sweeps on the face of Mo Shanghua and others. He doesn't find Mo Shanghua's face. He suddenly calms down and laughs with his knees. The willow eyebrows on the street can't help frowning. It seems that this is true. However, except that she would give Yunji a tit for tat, she didn't really stimulate her. When she was taken down that day, she didn't see any signs of madness. How could she suddenly go mad now? Is it difficult that someone deliberately harmed her during her absence? Think of this. She can't help but quickly across a flash of light. But before she has time to grasp, there's a little guy outside in a hurry. Reply to the princess. There's a distinguished guest. Please hurry to meet. What kind of guest do you want me to meet personally? Mo Shanghua thought about it in his head, so he interrupted, but he turned around and asked a question. Back to the princess, the messenger said, yes, His Royal Highness the Second Prince. Now he has been invited into the main hall. The little servant girl's voice fell, and the whole room was shocked. Qinya couldn't help it. She directly asked in surprise, are you wrong? Your Highness the Second Prince has not returned to the imperial city long ago. How could he be here? It's very important. I dare not lie. The servant girl quickly knelt down to show her loyalty. Take me quickly. Mo Shanghua feels that it's not easy, but he can't think of a reason for it. It's better to meet her as soon as possible and then make plans. Along the way, she was thinking about why Yin Moli suddenly appeared in Yuzhou, but she didn't receive any news. What made her think more was the person's intention, whether it was good or bad. Although there's worry in the flower heart on the street, it is still walking quickly. When passing by Pingji's residence, it happens that it bumps into him face to face. Pingji looked at the flowers on the street in a hurry. She was very happy. She looked at her and said, isn't this the princess? Muir, please help me to have a good look. Isn't it wrong for me? Shouldn't the princess be forbidden in the dockyard now? How can she be here? As her maid, Muir naturally cooperated very well. Madam, your eyes are correct, and I can see clearly. This is really a princess. It's not that I'm dazzled. I'll send my concubines greetings. Pingji, this just a face suddenly blessing body salute, and then also don't wait for the flower on the stranger to open mouth, then woo from the body. However, maidservant but clearly remember, because of Cloud G's affair, the princess but voluntarily and South younger sister together band foot. But now, but regret, still can't bear, lonely came out. The frown on the street was slight and indisputable. Seeing this, Qinya stepped forward and said in a cold voice, our princess has a reason to have to come out. Mrs. Shui still doesn't want to stop here. It's better to delay time. When my wife talks to the princess, there is no reason for my servant to interrupt. Can you be a cheap servant who wants to take the princess instead? Unexpectedly, this time, Pingji was a smiling face with no talent at all. She directly lowered her face and scolded harshly. Qinya choked and opened her mouth, but she didn't know how to refute for a moment. The flower on the street sees this. The cherry lips that tiny purse this just light stir up. The word is sharp. My person, how she should also be my business. Don't allow Pingji to take the place of a lesson. It is this little wench that you sighed. Should adjust well is. Mua has always been loyal. Even if the princess is anxious to find someone to save her face, there is no need to involve an innocent person. Pingji always knew that Hua would fall down this time, so she had no scruple to speak. Innocent? I remember the day before yesterday, this little girl was making a lot of noise in front of the dockyard. I thought about Pingji's face at that time, so I didn't investigate too much. But now, Pingji, you seem to pay special attention to the rules and ethics of the maidservant, so that you don't get the reputation of being unfaithful and crooked in the future. The flower eyes on the street look at Pingji calmly, but the words they spit out seem to have sharp spikes, which makes Pingji very irritable. She pinched the handkerchief hard and let it go again after a while. She said without a smile, I'm afraid that the upper beam is not right and the lower beam is crooked. It's a pity that it's not here. Now the princess herself has gone in and out of the palace without permission, regardless of the rules. Are you afraid that this custom can't be brought up in the palace? In my opinion, maybe the whole people of Yuzhou City will fight to be like the princess. It seems that Pingji should really learn the rules. When her black and white eyes looked directly at Pingji, she felt that the development of things was beyond her imagination. Sure enough, in her uneasy eyes, Imo Shanghua looked at her very quietly, with a deep voice. First of all, there are noble guests in the house. If the Lord is not here, I am the most qualified person in the house. I have to come out to receive them during the forbidden period. You can tell me, if I don't come, who is qualified in the mansion, you or the rest of the concubines? Or do you mean to make the palace a laughing stock and make people laugh? In this way, Pingji's face turned white and angry, but she still had nothing to say. She couldn't speak, but she didn't plan to stop. She simply lowered her face deliberately. Secondly, the matter of Yunji hasn't been decided yet. The position of my princess is still the hostess of the house. You're only a concubine. How can you speak ill to my princess? Don't say there's nothing wrong. Even if there's something wrong, it's not your turn to talk. Chinya, hold her mouth. You Pingji smell speech, almost gasp of jump up, clench one's teeth way. You can't so punish me, I just for a moment blunder. Imo Shanghua doesn't want to pay attention to her. She turns around and orders Chinya, you'll punish me here. Later, you'll go to the main hall to find me. If you have any resistance, you'll double it. Princess, don't worry. For those who dare to offend and speak ill of others, I will not be soft-hearted. Chinya immediately and crispy should come down. Lip corners can't control schadenfreude, slightly up. Imo Shanghua nodded again, for looked at the body, slightly shaped some servant girls to stay here, then went to the front hall alone. Seeing this, Chinya winked at the two of them. The two of them knew each other and immediately came forward to suppress Pingji. Flat G done when the flower looks pale, struggled twice fruitless, then angry way. A gang of cheap maidservant. Quickly get away, my wife is you can touch. Next to the wood sun C. Then you go to pick and pull one of the maid's arm, shouting, you still don't let go of madam. Careful your dog life. Chinya's eyes passed again, and the two remaining servant girls suppressed moor. Looking at the master and servant who are struggling and angry, Chinya steps forward slowly. I'm just under orders. I don't dare to touch them. I have to touch them. Madam, forgive me, said the words of apology. The action in her hand is also merciless, ruthlessly fell down, left and right bow. Not long, the 10 slaps will be finished. Each of these 10 slaps is extremely heavy, and Pingji's cheek has become red and swollen. Thinking of Pingji's usual arrogance, Chinya pretends to be sorry and says, the princess has also ordered that if there is any resistance, she will be punished twice. Madame Shui and her maidservant have offended. With that, he continued to bow left and right. Pingji had no chance to scold others, so she was beaten again. Her hands were tightly fisted, and her slender nails almost pierced her palms. Her heart was filled with hatred. See your highness, the second prince. As soon as Imo Shanghua entered the main hall, he saw a handsome man in Xuani sitting quietly in the main seat. Knowing this, he bowed his eyes and saluted. Princess, you're welcome. Beicheng is the emperor's younger brother of our palace. You are the younger sister. You really don't have to be so polite. Get up quickly. Yin and Mo Li see this, immediately put down the tea in the hand. A smile is very gentle mouth. If it is true that it is still the same as before, the essence of clothing and animals will not change at all. The flower heart in the MO is very cold to think, but on the face is light way. Thank your highness. Just gift can't abandon. Minister concubine dare not overstep. While speaking, he stood up. Since this is the case, we don't insist on it. Sit down. Yin Imoli lips smile unchanged, just eyes color slightly deep. It seems to meditate on something. Imo Shanghua just sat down in the position of the next head and looked at Yin Moli quietly. However, the eye of the people, it is to let her eyes flash a bit shocked. is as like as two peas. He is just the same man who had fought yesterday. Even the Schwani bodyguard behind her is the same as the one she fought with yesterday. She has thought that this person's origin must be not simple. She didn't expect it to be, so be taken by surprise. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.